Unmuted. All right. Well, it's 1 minute early. Tom may still come, maybe. So. Good afternoon, everybody. I think Jessica's one basically we should just if you want to do shuffle quick. This is my council right here, our council, city administrator. What you doing? Yeah. Yeah.
Jessica, self-service. We are doing the remediations. And I'm celebrating in in some regards. Stay with virtue issues. So she said we need to place. So I'm very glad to be here today. Go through the process and very grateful for the opportunity to do the NC. This process works and
and absolutely. So one of the things that we used to be as far as they try to promote, they share best practices across the state, how we should manage municipalities. And so most recently, I went to an elected official workshop out here, and in addition to that, it's officer several great events like finance officers, mentioned city administrators, law enforcement, government, public works. Do they have something along those lines?
that's the street people. Either the quiz.
Yeah.
We have police chiefs meeting specifically because finance officers, human resource. Code enforcement. I mean, there's something for that.
Yeah, so I see.
I apologize, it must be bad when you have terrible, I don't know, sorry. My men, I only said of my men are, but yeah, several different affiliate groups, and yeah, a lot of trainings and. So I apologize.
Okay, that's so thanks for this. For group, so you're already ready to leave, huh? I'm gonna have to. Yeah, let's hope, there's grants, so that's what I was going. So, as you know, he's had that too. Yeah, so multitasking, right? I think that's one of those multitasking. So why are we here? So as I was considering the approach to why we're talking about what we need to do this afternoon, and some of the things that I believe are important. I was looking for quotes that
It's by fault order.
Oh, okay, there's a vote. Yeah, there's a vote. Right, yep, roll call this.
Mayor Eli Seeley.
Here.
Sarah Anderson. Here. Pat Biggett.
Here.
Kayla Wallace. Here. Bill Rolke.
Here.
Larry Moore.
Here.
Mike Tiedemann.
Here.
All right, so, ready to go,
We'll stop, adopt the agenda. We'll try to do that. Make a motion to adopt the agenda. Second.
motion second to adopt the agenda as written. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. All right, any other additional line of business? Okay.
Do business.
So, strategic plan, the why, right? So as I'm looking around for folks and motivation for, thoughts about why you approach strategic plan. So you guys got this with Dusty Johnson. Dusty, as you well know, was the congressman, for the state of South Dakota. Now running for governor. So he's, putting himself forward. One of his talking points is that he feels like South Dakota is a great state. Obviously, he's a born and raised South Dakota, but he feels like there's a little bit of we're not all moving in the same direction. So he says that one of the things that we have to go back to, and this will probably here in this pandemic between now and when we go, we're gonna hear quite a few different spiels. But we have to look at this from a strategic perspective. You have to understand where we're going. And if we don't, as a state, we know we have multiple priorities across the state that speak to what we want to do as South Dakotas. So as I'm listening to this yesterday noon, I'm thinking about, this session we're gonna have today. trying to justify the reason for getting us together, not only to do it this year, but look at opportunities in years following to revisit this and revisit the community survey and things like that, so. So there was a baseball player for the New York Yankees. His famous quote is, it's never over till it's over. Oh,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
Yogi Berra, yeah, there you go, okay, Jerry wins. I have prize for you again. Yogi Berra, a pretty colorful gentleman, played catch for actually won 10 minutes as a player. Went on to manage and, yeah, again, was a very colorful guy. He has a very interesting quote. He said that, if you don't know where you're going, you might end up someplace else. And so I believe that the reason we're doing this today is to understand where we're going. I think each one of us probably has visions in our head of what are the important things in the community. Today is designed to be an opportunity for us to validate that. And then basically come up with a strategic plan that we can look to for the next 3 to 5 years. Again, we want to make it dynamic, but we want a strategic plan we can all look to it. It's consistent with the way we approach work. So without further ado, I've only got about 10 slides, but I'll do some transitioning back and forth just to switch the slides. And the first thing that I want us to talk about is a vision. And this is designed to be conversational, especially with you guys, because you guys are the leaders of the community. They're gonna help bring this to life. We have to paint a compelling picture of what it is that we want that key. And so, this vision to me represents a starting point. And, I would welcome your feedback on elements of this vision, whether they're things that you need, maybe there's some parts of it that are unnecessary. Does anybody have any comments with respect to the vision that maybe here? Because as you can imagine, there's gonna be members of our community that are gonna see things like forward thinking, they're gonna interpret that in multiple ways. They're gonna see things like growth, they're not necessarily going to like that. There are people in our community that don't want us to grow. And one of them lives in my house, so she has a blonde hair, she's about this tall. She just does what, 7th Street. I think she has a very vested interest, as we're promoting growth across the community. I got my wife to every year about 7 feet. So, what parts of the vision do you feel like ring true to you? Are there any parts of the vision that we can change? Would you make any recommendations? And as you consider vision, we're looking at the values. Does everybody agree with those values? We have to have some pride in our community. We taught responsible growth, and in the second hour, we're going to be joined by a few economic development folks. Our home economic development corporation, in addition to some industry and some other lines. So there'll be additional folks here that will help us talk to what that looks like. Because responsible growth, I think you could counter with the Harrisburg and T's of the world. Lincoln County, South Dakota is the 9th fastest growing county in the United States of America. So those guys try to control growth despite of different than yours for South Dakota. We are uniquely positioned because of our geography, halfway between 2 cities involved, where we're going to be able to again make this picture and try to go in the right direction. Transparency, and I think that's one thing that is absolutely key and critical. We are very regularly about open meeting laws, open meeting laws are in the end designed to promote and ensure transparency. People should have access to everything we do. There, of course, are special exceptions where we'll go into executive session and we try to limit those. And when we go into executive session, as we all know, we have to state very specific reasons. There definitely are a couple of things from a legal perspective that do allow us to talk amongst ourselves, but for the most part, about 99% of what we talk about should be transparent about them. Innovative, and sometimes people don't like to do innovation, right? Because innovation also challenges it challenges small town values in the sense that a lot of people like small town living because things don't change as often as rapid. Sometimes when you hear innovation, you think the pace of change happens a little too quickly, and things get out of our control. So, but innovation And I would say that, I would suggest that we are actually already going by building a Bitcoin mining center here in town, so we're just gonna compete to that because of private investor. And that's a fairly innovative thing, while not a data center per se, it really is, kind of what the data center model looks like. That's a huge topic right now in the United States, because we understand that data centers are critical to the use of artificial intelligence, because in the future, we'll be using artificial intelligence in a structured way that we're supposed to. They rely on several computers, data centers across the United States. Texas, they're building along with several square miles. North Dakota just won a very significant project. $1 billion project to build data centers. We've seen, Jerry, when he looks at the list of business opportunities for the state, there's several people that want to build small data centers. Now, right now, it's tough. We don't make our own power, right? So that's kind of a proposition. I think we need to look at ways to try to consider where we might be able to bring a small data center to town. Because Congressman Johnson actually brings very nicely yesterday to a place like Sioux Falls, when you have 7 jobs, it's not a big deal, right? When you got a data center there, you got 7 jobs too. Yours looks like Salem, Lemon, places like that. That's a fairly significant thing. Those are good things, so. Any parts of the vision, the core values suggesting, don't make sense or things that we change.
Okay. As you're continuing to think about this, as we get into hour 2 and hour 3, we'll do the same thing. We'll provide opportunities for people to provide some feedback. So one of the things that we use to determine our direction was a community-wide survey. Community-wide survey was, I don't know, 30, it was a little long. I guess that's like, let me that up. At least, I think they're gonna have an opportunity to see the questions that follow that. To me, it provided some great feedback. And don't get me wrong, there's great feedback and there were some absolutely yes. The comments about, and then I was telling some of the folks here a little bit earlier, one of the comments was, you guys should really keep notes from the city council meetings. You should post them online and you should even do video. And it was sort of like, yeah, we do that. So some of this is, and we have to take that person's comment, the right way, because we know now that you got a gap that we need to be able to fill, so that we can push information out. So there were quite a few different things. So from the community perspective, when we look at priorities are based on how often they gave us certain comments on certain questions or mentions, how often certain words were used. And then it's correlated to the rankings. And so some of the different rankings for safety, security, for challenges, for communication, et cetera, those correlated to how some of the survey results came up. So affordable housing rentals, that's obviously on everybody's mind, like there's nothing that's cheap anymore. Everything's very expensive. I think it does some great things as we look at housing development by using tax implemented funding. The district established on that side of town, forces of homes of the affordable range now to 410.
Because it's part of the house.
Yeah, so that doesn't sound poor, that's affordable, considering, 5-10 years ago, you could still buy a home for $100,000. That's just not a thing anymore, so. So having homes in town that are affordable, and then multiple styles, there were several people that commented, they wanted more apartments, they wanted more affordable homes, and so that's something we take into consideration. Several comments about downtown. And this one was really hard. It was hard for me to wrap my head around, what are the things that we can do downtown to promote our, the core of our community? Because we know that geographically, it's not at the corner of 46 and 21, where there's a lot of traffic on very often, very basis. And when you talk about private businesses coming in town, Big and Sugar took a leap of faith when they opened. They were in their location, we moved over to the old liquor store. And then, Cal Rose moved in for a short while, they've since closed. But, there's about half the businesses in the downtown area that do need something, right? But at the same time, it's hard to go to someone as a business owner and help them decide that you have to open a business, right? So I think we have to look at incentives that help us understand what types of business to bring in town.
And I know Councilor Peterman wants downtown, wants a microgrid, right?
You know,
Yeah,
rooftops, right,
yeah, right. Well, I mean,
what's the retail?
Yeah.
Every restaurants, all that stuff, they follow.
Yeah.
They need ends.
Yeah, absolutely. People in town, once 46 is back open and it's not, you don't have to take your life, into risk to drive down it, once it's open to the eye of water, I think that's gonna help. I do think some of the traffic is gonna flow between Inwood and 29 when they finish that, right? But I do think 146 is open and ready, when we have more regular traffic and more working out of water. I think that is gonna change that. The other thing that I think is also gonna help as it relates to heads in town that correspond to taxes, that correspond to business is the new development on the northeast side of town. That new development shifts the physical geographic center of our community slightly closer to where downtown is, right? And I don't have a perfect pinpoint where exactly that would be, but if we have more people on that side of town, that closer to the baseball fields, they're gonna use Old 77 to get up north, or come to town, down Third Street, or down Old 77. They're gonna come to downtown for what they need versus, I mean, we don't think it's very far from the new development out to Valley Shore or Sunshine. But, if there's something downtown that might offer them an opportunity to get a meal or something else, they're gonna do that. So the one thing I do want to talk about too, is childcare. Because to me, childcare is item number one. And we were talking about this in the meeting the other day, because a community leans forward with respect to investing in infrastructure, right? Because nothing else really matters. It's great to have houses, it's great to have businesses. If I don't have the roads to get there, if I don't have the power to turn the lights on, I don't have the water and the sewer that has to be available for those places, then I shoot myself. But so we've always looked at infrastructure as the base of care. I think we need to reframe the way we look at childcare, and we need to consider childcare part of our infrastructure. Because we can build businesses in town, we can provide opportunity there, for things for people that have things to do. But they won't move to town if you don't have childcare. And again, we're only at about that 50-60 range right now. Whereas you're still down to 140. So we have to consider childcare as an element of infrastructure. It has to be a very high priority, and it has to be something we invest in. We have people in our community who are willing to invest. Some want to give money to that effort, so that we know for the sake of the future, we've got childcare there, right? So that has to be issue number one, and that was reiterated in this one. That was glad to see it. I think people understand that. There's a lot of people in our community that want to see childcare. Traffic safety, a lot of comments about putting something on 46 because we've got a couple of kids that live on the north side of town, Austin, Kansas, one of them. Brecken and Brindley are pretty old enough now, to pretty good about it. I see a lot of kids that get close to 46. We know that even those people when they were started. So things that we can do to promote public safety, I think those are good things and stuff. And then communication. There's always opportunities to improve communication, because even if you're perfect, you're probably not anticipating the challenges that are gonna come in the future. And I would say that with the storms that just recently occurred, as I look out at the branch that came down on the rain there, that was a great exercise in how to communicate. And I received several comments from across the community about the benefit of that communication. At the same time, it could have been better. So I think we always be looking for opportunities to look at that. Look for different avenues and whatnot. So very high satisfaction with public safety events. We sponsored a bunch of great events in town, and then the community feel. And then within the safety infrastructure and communication, and there's things we can see. So any questions or comments there? All right, so when we think about the way to frame our strategic, the way to frame our strategy going forward, I've broken it down into 5 major areas, 5 pillars. Each one of these pillars corresponds to an area in our community that I believe we need to focus on. And it's something that we need to invest in, and I'll break down each one of these in either model frame and context of these are a couple of things that I believe we need to do, but also, did we hear comments through the feedback survey, not only the survey, but also other meetings. Because each one of you has constituents in your ward that, we know that there's some that have no speed now, right? Which is great, you know, sometimes they need to learn boundaries, but, so each one of the elements or pillars of our strategic plan has a couple of different, high level objectives, things that I believe we can do in our community, and then, outcomes that we can measure. And that's one of the things I want to be able to walk away from today with is a good feel for, what are some of the things that we can look at in a year, 2 years, 5 years, that help us, understand whether or not we're meeting the mark. Because if we do that same survey next year or 2 years, and we haven't moved the needle, you know, that's pretty tough, so. All right, so. Without further ado, pillar number 1, thriving community development. And I know several of you have talked to me about what that means, how we lean forward from the perspective of making sure that we have a thriving economic situation here. But we want to be able to foster a vibrant, interconnected community where people feel comfortable. And sometimes the neighbors should never talk to neighbors, I get that. But everybody should have people in town that they would rely on. We know that, again, the small was a great example of people stepping forward and helping neighbors. And this summer, I've seen several events where if someone needed help, there are people in town to step forward. So, as far as the elements of what I think we do from a community development perspective, we need childcare. I think if we get to 100 childcare spots in town, I think we move the needle. Now, part of that, as several of you already know, is leaning into the consulting engagement that we currently have in place with the business of childcare. So the business of childcare, we're going to keep them, we've already got it down. We have a pretty good crew of people that are part of that effort, including city leaders, including representatives from the school district, representatives from our existing primary source of daycare, and then also members of the district. They may not have a huge requirement, but we know that in order for them to grow, one of the first questions we're going to be asked if people are going to be town is childcare, right? So we have to make sure we invest in childcare. There are facade improvement grants that different organizations from around the state have promoted in the past, where we can help promote improving the facade of certain businesses downtown. The kind of front facing, what is it they're offering, signage, et cetera. I want to say that Senator, let's just start the list the last 10 years, but making sure that we can get after some funding, grant funding or otherwise to help improve the look of downtown, because I think that's one of the things that is necessary for us to revitalize downtown. Full service family restaurant. Actually, I heard this on, there were multiple folks that responded in survey. In my head, when I read that, I think there's a couple of ways I think about this. Number one, we have 13 places to eat Beresford. For a town of 2,200, I think that's a pretty good number of places to eat. To all of those places to eat, would they qualify as full service? I'm not sure exactly what full service is. In my head, when I first met my wife and we first started getting back to South Dakota, when I was in the military, Emily's was open here, right? And Emily's was open from 5 and 1 till at night. Or was it 20? No, that cropped up the last 4. Yeah, so and what was Touch and Dutch? Was that, there was something before that? Yeah, I mean, they're back open as the, I don't even know if they call themselves up there now, but they serve food, both live bar and county line, they should serve food at the restaurant too, so. And they realize some needs to be looking at something, but there was a consistent theme. What's that? Did you not want to say it? You said, yeah, so. I think that's definitely right. But so, we want to promote things around us because we know there's people probably having the town. Yeah. So then it's sales tax there. I'm not saying it's bad. Yeah, no, it's different dynamic then. One where we're going to, here, pretty even more than that. And so, full service investment. Now, this is again one of those where, much like the fact that we want to revitalize that town. Well, that's a private investor, business startup thing, that while we can help them, guide them in the right direction, pat them on the back. There's some aspects of that where you don't necessarily want to do business of directly supporting. Now, maybe make it easier for them to come to town, find legal ways to do that, absolutely. The same thing with full service family restaurant. Inviting Perkins to Beresford, knowing that our numbers probably aren't consistent with what they look at when we look at metropolitan areas and look at intersections and routes. And the people have asked why the riders came. And I told them, some 25-year-old is sitting in front of a computer with artificial intelligence and data on where they have stores currently, where there's an unmet need. And even though we have our store just down the street from where O'Reilly's built, and one downtown with service, right? That was nothing that we controlled, supported, or endorsed. Now, is it now a job for a few members of our community because it's sales tax community? Yes. So while not a local business, it is something that we should be able to support. So, the full service family restaurant things that we need is, that's tough to crack, so we'll need to come up with some innovative rules to do that. And at the same time, there were a few comments, actually not as many as I expected, on places to stay, right? We have the Super 8, we have Crossroads. We all know that Dick is probably close to retirement. There's some discussion that when he retires, he may sell a business. What does that become? Does that become a place where we could put in a smaller hotel? We could invite a hotel chain in town to compete with Super 8, because Super 8's kind of run down, right? Who knows what that's, right now, we have major baseball and softball tournaments in town, and we have other athletic events or reunions. Old fashioned days, it would be nice to have a place for people to stay, which the Crossroads doesn't have a lot. Not a lot of noise there, so. There were several comments about new walking and bike trail, so I read those and I said, well, we have some, I think, to me, when I read those, it was people want to be outside, people want to have ways to, so they did say new parks, and I think there are some people that just on that and was going upset because they couldn't use the park, but most of you probably saw the park, there were several, as my guess, what I call widowmakers, big trees still hanging down from the tops, and so we did the right thing by keeping the park, but as long as we did it. We have great park space, I think. We just need to look at making sure that if there's ways or opportunities for us to improve that, there's adding playground to the North Ballfield complex, so the forgotten children of baseball tournaments and do that, and people in doing that, if also use the same one, because there was a comment the other day that there's no playground on the north side. I said, well, what about Eagle Park? Eagle Park's there, was an Eagle Scouts project, I don't remember which Eagle Scout was, but, and then now, the North Ballfield will also use an opportunity there, so. And then 100 housing for the residents, well, not quite 100, but, with twins and whatnot, I think we're definitely working towards that. So if you looked at 100 houses, perhaps that's a good goal for our 5 to 10 year plan rather than the next year plan. So that's thriving community development. Safety and quality of life. So I think the residents, so and this is kind of two separate things, right? Because when we talk safety, will the fire department come if my house is on fire? Will the ambulance service come if I have a medical emergency? Will law enforcement come through the legal emergency? We all know that we have great first responders in this community. All the comments that I saw on the survey were very supportive. But then also on the flip side of that, when we talk about quality of life, we talk about what are the things that people want to see in their community that correspond to when I get off work, do I have things to do? If I'm sending my kids to school, do they have an easy way to get there? Are there ways to promote the health within our community? I started the health council about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. They haven't been quite as active as I would like them to be. Part of the problem is that I'm not poking them often enough, but, there are things that I think we can promote health. Reduce falls, because we've been given some data by the EMS community recently, and the number one reason for EMS falls in our community is falls. And we know that about 80% of the time, it's someone over the age of 7. So, my wife and a few folks teach a course at the library to help promote mobility and reduce the incidence of falls, or kind of strength and reduce the potential of falls. I think things like that need to be expanded. I think we can find ways to, generally promote health, right? I see some things in there, Ken Aiken does, in Sioux Falls. He's obviously a very active guy. I think those are great. But I just think we need to be reasonable. Some people aren't, some people we don't take advantage of some of these things, some won't. So. Any questions about safety and quality of life? All right. The next. Heritage and innovation. So when I tell and I always tell the story about, I get kind of geeky about Paris story. And it's funny because I haven't found anybody else. I guess I haven't talked enough and maybe any problem else that somebody with the history about. The Paris thing, I just think from my perspective, I think there's a tremendous opportunity. I think we led with that in the Beresford, what's the name of the site, broadcasting? No, it was the SDPD show.
Yeah, they put a lit.
Go to Life, yes, the Go to Life episode. I think we led with the.
Yeah.
Eli Ricard gave ground, it was known as Paris from 1872 to 1824. I think that's.
I'll have to tell you on that, Eli, that, I had a notebook, because the last time during, I think, the homecoming week, when they used to do a little bus tour, I got to play Lord Charles Beresford, and we did a bus tour, and I had a script, and I still had a copy, and I gave that to the Dakota Life guys and said, this is everything you need to know. So Jane Carlson and others over time put together that history script that exists.
Okay.
And that's where that came from.
Yeah.
A lot of it.
Yeah, that's great, I mean, beyond things that are as awesome as everything that was displayed in that Go Life episode, we know that we have folks that collect at Beresford, has his music collection. Mr. Marine has basically a museum inside of Dad's, right? For anybody that hasn't been in there, it's a tremendous opportunity, and we know we have other folks in town that they're interested in doing something from the perspective of a historical society, creating a museum. We don't know what the right is, but we know that that's part of what we're gonna do. But when you balance heritage, understanding where we come from, what are the things that work well, what makes us Beresford, what allows us to retain our identity or claim our identity. How do we balance that in this innovation? I just took 2 old pictures in the bottom, and then I put the Beresford Hotel symbol on the right. Being innovative, being a place that people want to come because they know that the tech will support them. And we know we've got a wide range that from technology perspective, right? Again, several comments in the survey said, I don't use Facebook, Facebook's, wrong, blah, blah, blah. And I understand each person's perspective is, I respect that. At the same time, we've got to find a way to get information out to the public so that they can see that in a rapid fashion. We factor in the historical perspective of, we tried in the opt-in app before, or the texting, but it was a little too expensive and nobody was using it. Very few people were out there. Alcester does do something similar. They're paying a pretty hefty $3,000 to $5,000 a year for their texting app. Their texting tool, it's not even an app. One thing I am paying attention to is the city of Spencer after the flooding, not last year, I think 2 years, last year. Yeah, last June, right, that really bad flooding over in Iowa. Spencer, Iowa found themselves in a position where they were having, it was tough for them to communicate. So they immediately implemented an app, and that app had push notification capabilities that allowed the city to actively communicate with citizens. So citizen doesn't necessarily have to have a Facebook account, an Instagram account, a Twitter account. They just have to have a phone. We know that about 98 or 96% of our residents have smartphones. So there inevitably would be 4% that are still gonna watch the, what do we call the scrolling thing? Channel 8. It still would be folks that, you know, watch it, like, well, I think we're down to like 40s or so that still have that service that are able to watch it, but. Public art and cultural identity, you know, one of the things that I've seen is, I asked the, Peterson Historical Funds Law from the other day, you know, they have that mural alongside, I said, has anybody ever asked to redo that? And it said he wasn't aware of it. And then I asked Carrie, because she's got some artwork that's on the outside of her building, her Carrie's got some pearls. How long it's been, that's been done, and was there any way to potentially update that? Because that was an art project by, Mrs. Soxad. She took a class down and we did that. And to me, it's nice art, but it's, can't tell them this, so maybe we can expand and maybe do something else. As Chloe said, Centerville, South Dakota, when you're in there at the primary intersection of downtown, they have some really nice pictures of old Centerville. And I think, you know, something like these pictures right here blown into on metal, something that will stand and elements, you know, the elements here in South Dakota are a little bit more harsh than everywhere else. You know, that might be something that people would appreciate, because as we talk about revitalizing downtown, people could walk around downtown with pictures of former Beresford. And I think at one point in time, it was the highest census, 3,500? Just south of 4,000? Isn't it part of the comprehensive plan? I felt like,
It'd be a long time ago.
yeah.
I think it was higher than everything, look at that.
Okay, just a couple more slides, collaborative governance, and there's a few things that in this space where I believe we can. We know that we work towards being better about communicating with our citizens. At the same time, we can always do better. And so I think there are things that we could potentially do to improve the communication. So we just have to put options, what's useful, what people would actually use. And some of that, the nice thing about a lot of the technology that will feed information to people is you can generally gauge how often people are using it. For instance, we can look at page views on our city website. We can look at page views on Beresford Tel's public website. We can look at Facebook has some great metrics on how often people are using our messages and the engagement scores. So over the period of the storm where people were actively relying on information from Facebook, again, not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but good. Some of the engagement metrics were stagnant, and you know, we know that there's something we can get better about that. But regular town halls, I started this process a while ago. First one was, I think, 6 folks that showed up. Unfortunately, two people that came had a very specific topic that they wanted to cover, so that, you know, took most of the hour. We had that at the coffee shop, and then at noon, I went to Kyle Rose before they closed and hosted another town hall. And actually, I took that opportunity during that town hall to, you know, whose Facebook Live. Again, keep saying Facebook. Readily available app, understand it's not perfect by any stretch. I mean, as Austin was helping set up today, Austin said, PS Tuesday. You know, here's our chief of technology and telecommunications that does use Facebook. So, but I used Facebook Live that day, and several people watched the video afterward back, kind of do their updates, and they did mind hearing the top updates, in addition to our city council meeting, which we are very good information. Because there are some people that say, well, the notes from the city council meeting are, they're scant. And I said, well, yeah, they might be, but if you want to see every last second of the conversation, here's a link. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that. So that's what that little video thing on the right hand side of each council meeting dates, and that's what they need. So again, some of this is just it, making sure that we can reach out to the right people. Some sort of track that says, hey, if you wanted us to do X, we did Y. You know, or if you'd asked us to do X, we did X. We not only did X, but we did it better. Because if people in the community, if our constituents were asking us to do certain things, they're very intent about it. And this is where it becomes critical to understand if we got a a legitimate number of people in our community that are interested in doing things. We know we've got some really strong voices in town, right? I can tell you, there's one person that's been, hopefully really hard to think about all the things we're all going to do. A couple of opportunities here and there, but, I understand that, you know, we strive that sweet wheel gets the grease phenomenon. At the same time, when we talk about, you know, you asked, who did it? Those are the kinds of things that I think we can effectively portray, not only through the lens of the city council and our public meetings, but also through probably some sort of traffic that people see. When you drive by, and somebody opens a campaign effort, and they've got the little sign that starts at the bottom, they want to raise $20,000, and it starts at the bottom. I mean, that's attractive. When you drive by on a everyday basis, you can think, oh, someone must be doing a decent, you know, contribution to said effort. So, things like that we can use to our advantage for the beneficial. And then obviously department evaluations, we're working on getting more objective about that. And I think that's a good thing. I think making it a structured process that we will continue to use in the future. Terry will not be here for the next round of department head evaluation, so using that to guide the way the city is managed, so that we know that if there are specific things that we want to plant with a department head as a goal to help make the community better, because what we come up with in this strategy should eventually become part of what we plan in the laps of our department heads. If they're going to be on working on this, right? We're going to come to a consensus. We're going to balance what we see today with all the community input. But in the end, a lot of the folks who are going to do work are the city administrator, future city administrator, the finance officer. And so very exciting opportunities, but those are the kinds of things that need to be on the background. That's why in an hour or two, you know, in about 19 minutes, there should be a good group of folks that are coming in to help us kind of validate some of these things going forward. All right, two more slides. Economic prosperity. And so one of the things we led with, you know, we talked about thriving economic development. We would like, while we don't have control on a lot of the levers here, we would like if the fuel is filled, everybody in our community has an equal shot to keep well in life, right? And doing well in life, we all know that there are multiple definitions of that. It doesn't necessarily mean that you make them minimum months, that you have a new car. It means that if you have a nice home, shelter, food, opportunity to a job that you enjoy, a place for your kids to play, go swim in the summer. Those are the kinds of things that, you know, to me, need prosperity. When we talk about the economy of that, we know that we need to be able to bring in some jobs, and we have some jobs. I think we can bring in more jobs, and I think we have to continue to entertain opportunities to look at bringing in not only business, light business, you know, heavier business. We know that sometimes when we get the RFIs or request for information for those major businesses, that's a little, you know, the cattle operation was gonna hire 2,500 employees. That's the kind of thing that changed the dynamic of the people a little bit. There's been a few others that have been like that, so. Employers that employ 30 to 50, up to 100, good paying jobs in town that people will like. Those are the kinds of things we need to look at. One thing one interesting theme that I did find in the survey is that several folks said that, you know, we are surrounded in our community by agriculture. We live in an agricultural thing. Many of the folks that we go to school with, we play golf with, we go to meetings with, they live on a farm. And there's ways that I think in Beresford where we can continue to support that. And I think as we bring in members of the school board, because when the school board looks at what they're dealing with, it's not just the city of Beresford who's from that. They're actually looking at the school district. So I think shifting that mindset, understanding that we're gonna look at a business like the county line a little bit differently than we do one that's on our side of the interstate. We know that if we have ways where we can establish a good connection with them, especially if it's from a business perspective, then those are the guys that I think we can do that will help us. Pop-up shops, farmer markets, we actually do a pretty good job of that. I think finding additional opportunities to to do more of that, and our chamber of commerce will be here in hour two as well. As you guys have seen, we've got a lot of energy, we've learned a lot of good things. The one thing I've identified is the chamber of commerce is very small business, right? So when you start to look at companies like Sue, Fresco, Slumberland, their needs being met by the chamber, that's tough. So we have to find a way to make sure that we can connect with not only the small and the business continuum, but also the big businesses. So we'd like to add, and I say new downtown business. We know that if I hire a new, if we bring in a new manufacturing plant on the end of 16th Street, that's not downtown. But if we bring in 20 to 30 jobs, the siding company, did they ever decide where they were gonna go? The one who's gonna build siding, ceramic, or cement siding? Because they want to bring it.
That's a no go.
Yeah, because we were down, they were one of the two planners for an outfit looking for space. That's not necessarily downtown, but I also think that if we can bring our business downtown, it would attract other businesses. And anchor or, one of those things, I think that would be a good thing. And then tourism destination, this one's a little odd, right? But, I've heard some great stories in the past few days and weeks about tourism. So Jensen's, Nathan and Kristen. Nathan has a son, Grant, who was a sophomore, junior, or freshman. They live outside of town, they live on a farm, and they're pretty well plugged in. Nathan's had some experience with the governor's office of economic development. He's on the school board, president of the school board. His wife, sort of on a whim, just opened a Airbnb, VRBO. And it was sort of like, let's fix this old barn up, let's see where it goes. They've had guests in there continuously since they opened. Their first guest from New Jersey. They got on a plane and flew to Sioux Falls and stayed out in the country. And they sat on the back porch and were everybody sorry for the time of their lives. So they're, again, not in the community, but when we think about opportunities like that, Alice Munson's mom has a place right off the interstate. I know there's people that don't stay there. There are people that want to come to South Dakota, and I understand, I've been seeing the great media that's out about West River and Black Hills. But, we get it, that we don't have the mountains and bike trails and some of these other things, but there's a lot that people want to come and see. And if for nothing else, they want to come and see small town life, kind of how we are able to live what we do, because people obviously enjoy small towns. Questions about economic prosperity? Last slide. So everything up to this point in time is designed to sort of follow right? These are the things that we need to do that are informed by the priorities that I believe each one of you would agree is these are shared priorities. We know that we need to win vote, right? And the other thing is, because of the pace of the way the way things happen, this doesn't have to happen overnight, like it doesn't Harrisburg, Tears, Sioux Falls, or Rapid City. We're gonna put things in place today that may not come to fruition 5 years, 10 years, maybe a while down the road. But I think if we paint a picture of where we want to go, we're gonna put ourselves in a better spot to be able to get there. So, thoughts? Got about 10 minutes until we're focused on power to thing. Let me get my pen, so there's thoughts. Elaine, I'll take your advice. Should we stop the Zoom recording and we'll start back at what hour two? If we, let's say, suspend, we can see a very good bathroom.
I just think.
Okay. No, yeah, okay.
Just know that.
Yeah.
It's easy for you.
Okay. You're enough. You're welcome.
Yeah, one thing, the downtown ones are particularly difficult.
Yeah.
Outside to get out. Aging infrastructure, water, sewer, there's degree from now. From recycling center to old citizens. Not that I would imagine, and older buildings. They have, that's just. That's not, I can't crack, I mean, it's a crack, we're fortunate we have some. You know, even though reclamation or whatever, antique places that, you know, fill some storefronts in the back of the old building. I don't know how much water patties, that could be two flowers down there, there's two buildings, both sides of me are empty. And, even like one of them, myself. And then two on the south end of that block, so block, I don't know, it's. Two, three, four buildings out of a dozen that have anything going on there.
When it's set pictures, they also,
I think there's stuff, but
yeah, it's, nothing against their area, but you know, that's part of that, it's just a little. Again, I like the one on here, so it's. And I are to that. I'm pretty sure, so,
And these people trying to convert this and be more. Salvation.
interesting. But it's, no,
It's like, well, they're taking.
the event center. Oh,
Favorite.
out here,
Yeah.
that's right.
and you know, that's some of the. The hesitance to sell, you know, because we know we have people that have large tracts of land in town. That have said very clearly, you know, they will not sell, they will no development on their property. We know that changes to the different, right, as people. People, things change in their life, we know that changes somewhat, so. It's, you know, and of course, you can't force someone's hand if they own a business, or they own a property. So. Yeah, it is a tough nut to crack, you know, and when you move into one of the buildings, it might find the bank. Or City Hall,
Where's the road downtown? Main Street's out of 13th and.
yeah,
What's it?
I,
Funny.
you know, you'd love to see, you know, some private investors come in, you know, drop much money on us, but I like that happens too low. I mean, we make an effort to shift downtown with this current location, I mean, we know we have a commercial area out there, to the west. There's several businesses, not really any comfortable place to go out there, place to walk. There's obviously restaurants, and nice place to go, but, walkability is a little less.
If you look at the line, residential on the main line. If you got housing, you have rental storage. The patio or building house down.
Well, I've got the residents upstairs, I mean, even,
Yeah, I know.
even if there, I think there's some of those buildings that have apartments upstairs that aren't being used.
Right.
They're smaller, I mean, I didn't mind if they reached the that's part of it too, you know, my first house I bought in town there was 800 square foot, and a lot of people are looking for the first home to be a 1,500 square foot. House, that's what I think this development, especially the small houses. Do they equal more affordability? Yeah, you're right. We've got existing infrastructure that you can urge, or you can urge people, but, I don't know the shape of them either. I mean, some of those older buildings take a lot of work to get up to be something that is livable. But they're certainly not accessible.
Plumbing and whatnot, downstairs, you know, it's gotta go down those. Yeah, I'm not suggesting that's the answer. I wonder if there are big inquiries over time, yeah, people like, well, it'd be great if I could live in the back, I could get one of my buildings,
You know, and so Jefferson's not quite as small, what are they, less than 500? Probably, has anybody did buy them recently, so Jefferson Brewer. The opened down there just maybe 3-4 years ago, and they're one big. They have a nice area to relax, they have an inside where we can. You know, see their products, and then you have a place for food trucks coming back. You know, that food truck revolution is. We've seen Shania House be successful with coffee truck.
And we've done a couple of others, like the two that primarily operate out of, on a storefront. You know, Dan and I talked real briefly about, you know, what would it take for a guy like that in Delaware to buy a storefront, so the thing is, it's like. Well, whatever, yeah, they have everything they need, they seem to right there in front of them, so. That doesn't, it's not difficult, right, versus maintaining a store, buying a place downtown and having to put $150,000 in it just to make sure that. Their electric setting seem to work, electric plumbing. Roofs and, you know, not all of it. Alright, so have there been communities in South Dakota or in the upper Midwest? That have revitalized their downtown in the last 10, 15, 20 years? And if so, what would there be lessons learned that we? Two balls with it.
Yeah, well, but still, I mean, if you could, I mean, I grew up with Sioux Falls, I watched it change, I knew Richard, or Steve Metley from the day he started, yeah, he's the riverfront. Like, that guy, and he had a vision that was beyond his life. Okay, and you know, when the thoughts that came to my mind, get 10 new businesses downtown, you can't make it 1935 again. Okay,
Right.
okay, but if you take a snapshot of Sioux Falls downtown would not be near what it is, except that it became residential. And people lived there, and if you could isolate what you would call downtown Sioux Falls, it would probably be one of the top 10 population cities in the state. Okay, you know, because it adapted to modern lifestyle changes, you know, so to me, an example might be if you think the city hall and next to it. And how would you entice somebody to turn that into residential? Would you give them a break on the price to do something? You know, now you're bridging population here. The other thing is if you define downtowns like 2.5, 3 blocks, maybe a half off third. Is it a comfortable place to walk? The sidewalk in that? No, it's not. Right. You know, I mean, there may be some other things there. You know, to influence what downtown could mean to a community like Beresford is. To me, living in Beresford, we've heard it from some of the job applicants. That it has a sense. It's isolated enough to have a sense of its own community. A friend of mine moved from South Central Sioux Falls to Harrisburg, and he said, there's no identity. There are 4 restaurants in Harrisburg, you know. And so the opportunity is a place where you can go where you feel like you're at home. And then to me, the vision revolves around those things because well, one time, you know it. I mean, if you live in Beresford, you're counting on being someplace else for part of your life to make it complete. You know, not so much for Maryland, you know, but a lot of people that live in Beresford, but a major part of their life is someplace else. So that, to me, that defines the community needs going forward.
All right. And so as you guys are diagnosing, so
Yeah.
benefit to you guys. Is that as we invite our guests for to it, you will get an opportunity to see slides again. And as you're hearing it the second time, you hear me say something differently. Or if there's something about portion of what we've got baked in this currently. That either doesn't feel comfortable or is something like, you know, like Larry's points about kind of the vision, right, and identity, that's to feel at home. Right, wrapping those sorts of things into a vision. So if you guys hear things, and again, you're gonna be hearing. And again, but I also will, I'll task some of the folks who will come in, school district, economic development folks. With, you know, tell me, from your perspective, how do we get that, right? Because you're an economic development person. And we're saying that one of the things we, you know, priority number 1 is thriving economic development. How do we get there, right? So. All right.
There's a pretty big group out there.
Yeah, I see him, I'm gonna go invite him in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been there, done that, so.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm crazy. So.
How far is that from you?
Pretty hard.
Yeah.
No. I think the jump stealth might just be.
They're also.
Yeah, I think it's. Yeah, good, how are you? Full time. Yeah. It's not easy.
Thankfully, 25 miles away, so.
Yeah.
That was here, anyway. It's three. All right, it's just back here, but I'm looking at.
We have a roll in Hey, Jack. Doug? Mike, Dane, Mike. I think those are the alley public hearings, right?
So, oh, nothing. Right here, Doug.
I swear.
All right, I'm gonna jump in. We'll do some quick introductions and whatnot, but thanks for coming. I appreciate it very much. Austin was very helpful in getting the room set up and setting the plan here on time helpful and making sure that we have some handouts. I will shoot you with those again, that's what I said, so. And there's a one page and it's a page, there are a couple of slides. So the intent this afternoon, and I let our city council, city administrator, finance officer, city attorney know that they're gonna get the benefit of hearing this 3 times. So by the end, they're probably have it down like sales bit. But the benefit is, these guys are also the ones that are gonna be the most critical and tell me what parts of the plan probably need to stick, what parts of the plan probably need to go away. So before I get into anything, let's do a couple of just real brief introductions. Anyone on from the library?
Austin Hanson, telephone, internet, cable.
Just the first of this. Lane Johnson, finance officer.
Treasurer is the attorney.
Jerry Tangle, city administrator. Third Roar Council, Mike Human Council.
Cable board council.
Next, Council.
Well, Rocky Council.
Council.
Dustin Daigle, superintendent school, the Beresford School District. David Jensen, school. Josh Chase, Metro Grove Alliance, staff reports this much. Ellie H, practice department, business and golf course.
Doug Loudon, First Dakota, and Medco president. Michael Sherman, Chief of Police, Beresford Police Department.
Mike Anderson, what about?
Ben Ryder, golf course, Event Center.
Thanks for joining us. Some of these gentlemen are already prepared for league tonight. I'm gonna have to go home and run and get ready to. So you got it. Are you playing league? Mayor? Yeah. The old mayor. Former mayor. Yes. Yeah. Here, it's a United document during the storm process and clean up and about communication, very complicated, so that was a good thing. So today we're gonna take an opportunity to review our approach to where we need to go and be. I think each one of us probably has a perspective about what it is that we need to do in order to lean forward into what does our future look like. And so I'll start with the road bridge, so you guys are doing good stories for them, so we're gonna hate this by the end. There was a gentleman from the New York Yankees that was a catcher and played one, you guys can answer the same question, you've already got one prize. He was catcher, played and won 10 years, and then he became a manager. He said it's not over until it's over. Anybody know who that was? Got a good name. Yogi Bear. Yep, Yogi Bear, very colorful gentleman. He was was catcher, manager, loved to be in front, loved the media spotlight. He was a native New Yorker, those guys aren't shy, they're not gonna talk to everybody, right? He had a very interesting quote that people talk about later in his life. He said, if you don't know where you're going, you might end up someplace else. And so as I read that, I thought about creating a shared vision for our community. And it made sense to me that we need to have a strategy. And I actually sat with had an opportunity yesterday to listen to Congressman Johnson. Dusty was speaking at an event. And as he's pivoting now from his role as last year as a congressman from the state of South Dakota, to now a role where he's going to run for governor. And as he does that, one of the things that he's doing, one of his talking points is making sure people understand that one of the reasons that he's leaning forward and doing that is because he believes that South Dakota needs a strategy that everybody can look at and say, that's ours, that defines us, that's what we want to do, and that's how we're going to go forward. And so, I was listening to him, I'm like, there's some great analogies for what we want to do today. And so, made great sense to me. So as we get into the slide deck, and I promise I've only got 65 slides, and we really need some, there's only 10, so, the information that I've included in the strategic plan, and a lot of it's already there, but a lot of it has to do with what do we know after having served on council for a couple of years and then now as mayor for over a year. When I listen to the leaders in our community, and when I say leaders, I mean everybody who, street department, school district, Sioux Metro Growth Alliance, CPA, former city council, baseball and softball, PRC expert, Teresa Sagan, so thanks for joining us. I know there are things that each one of us would agree upon, but what I want us to be able to do is put it on paper so that we have a place something to be able to point to say, this is where we're going forward. So as we consider resourcing, as we move into the budget cycle, yay, very important. As we move into that period where we're working with the department heads on, hey, what are the priorities? We want to be able to point to things in this plan so that we know it maps to a strategic priority, so that each one of us can have a clear vision on where our community is headed. So as for a vision, I believe we are now you're going to see words in this vision that some are going to make perfect sense to you, some may be open for interpretation. But I think this is a vision that allows each one of us to connect to. Forward thinking small. Some people are going to see that and they're not necessarily going to be perfectly comfortable with that. Some people are going to see words like growth. And that's these two guys. There may be folks that are going to see that and they're going to say to themselves, I don't know that, and again, I've already said this once. Sorry, you guys are going to this again. There's about a 5'4" young lady who lives in my house that has one here that doesn't want Beresford to grow. She wants Beresford to stay the same size because we enjoy small town living, and I think that's part of our identity. But we know that growth, managed growth, or you'll see later, responsible growth becomes critically important to who we are and where we go moving forward. Because we know, and I always say this, but Harrisburg and Teeter are growing so fast they can't control their growth, right? There are so many things going on in that community that are beyond their control that we know we have some ways to affect change as it's happening. So this is the vision. When you think about the values, a community and Councilor Rohr gave me a great soundbite just a second ago. As you look at things like this, a lot of this corresponds to our identity. Who are we? When you're in different parts of the state, when you're in different parts of the upper Midwest, people are gonna hear Beresford, South Dakota, and they're gonna have a frame of reference, right? A lot of us are gonna understand the voice of South Dakota Public Broadcasting. They're gonna hear names like Tiny Lawrenson, Governor Buell, they're gonna hear Eli Ricard, who initially gave the ground for Beresford. They're gonna hear the name Harris, South Dakota. They're gonna be like, where's that? It's like, well, that used to be here from 1873 to 1804. We need an identity, and I think through this vision and then illustrating some of these values, I think that's what we do. So a spirit, we know when Friday nights kick off here in a few weeks, when the opening cross country meet, which is a sea of humanity, it happens just right over here. You know, those are great events, and it's very easy to spirit. So through the lens of the school, children and their parents that are a little too sometimes invested in those sports. But those are great events, but we need ways that we can promote that same level of community spirit in different things that we do, whether it's old fashioned days, whether it's the firefighters doing now on a fairly regular basis, or other things. And so responsible growth, transparency, anything we do, we want 99.9% of it to be transparent so that everybody can see it and consume it and shoot it in their own way. You're going to see one of the things you're going to see in the slide deck is communication. Communication is not perfect. We understand that. We need to find ways to make it better. Through the storm, there were several people that came to me and said, I love the Facebook updates, but then as I got the survey results back, and you guys see some of the survey respondents, they want us to get away from Facebook because like, I don't use Facebook, do not test Facebook. There has to be other ways. We know there are other ways, and there are ways to promote layered communication, but we need to hear from you guys on the right and wrong ways to do that. Special shout out to our police department that does a phenomenal job in communicating through Facebook, because they do a great job. So innovation, heritage preservation, you know, telling the story of the fact that this was Paris, South Dakota. Again, you guys hear me say that all too often, but I think that's something that's, you know, a thread that we can tug at, and we can bring people to town. You know, somebody's got to build a mini Eiffel Tower, and we'll make that happen. As we looked at the survey, and again, we had 72 respondents. So Kayla calculated that the response rate for a community of about 2,200 people, 2,220, roughly in the 4% range. Not perfect, not great, but good, right? 70 people at least produces enough results that we can see themes about the things that are going right, the things that are going wrong, where there's opportunities, and then some of the things that they would like to see us focus on. Because in the end, each one of us is responsible for making sure that the residents of Beresford have an opportunity to live their best life, right? So from the survey, issue number one was childhood. And a lot of you have been in different forums. Tyler Burton had a great comment. He was in one of the first meetings that I remember, two Metro Growth Alliance going to, where I said, you know, one of the big efforts that we're looking into child care acts. It's like, yep, if you figure that out, let me know, because everybody wants that. And it was consistent because they plug into several communities around the state. So that's obviously a consistent theme. One of the things I want to talk about as we think about childcare and childcare access, right now we're at a point where we only have about 50 spots, right? Several of you in here have little people that you need a place to go during the middle of the day. There are also others that need that place to go to work. But we all need that sense of security in our community for childcare. So infrastructure, when you look at a community and you think of infrastructure, right? We all think of, communications, we think of fiber in the ground, we think of water, we think of streets, we think of those things that allow us to, because the community isn't anything if I can't get to somewhere, if I can't use the restroom, if I can't communicate. So the infrastructure is an absolute requirement. I'm going to challenge everybody in this room and everybody throughout the community to begin to consider childcare as an element of infrastructure. Because unless we add childcare spots to this community, you know, there are families that want to move to town right now that won't, because we don't have childcare spots. So we're in the midst of an engagement with a company called Business of Childcare Consulting Group. Thanks to a generous grant from the Beresford Area Foundation, we received some money to do some work to lean forward with options on how to increase the number of childcare spots. We want, and you'll see some numbers that are got later in the brief that correspond to places where I think we can get. And so, affordable housing and rentals, our new development on the north side of town, We used, the way that we approached that, we wanted it to be affordable. The ceiling now for affordable is $410,000. Now, most of us, especially dinosaurs like myself, you know, I remember when you could buy a house for $50,000, $100,000. $400,000 is now affordable. When we look at the twins on the south side of town, they're $500,000 for a single level twin. You know, where you're sharing a wall and so affordable housing is something that we have to consider. There was one little theme that we kind of pulled out during the first hour of our session where we talked about revitalizing downtown, and that is something that you're gonna see that persists across the different things here, the different elements of the strategic plan. Perhaps one of the ways to promote revitalizing downtown is to consider residential options, and that's a longer conversation, but downtown, pedestrian and traffic safety, we have, there were several phenomenal comments in the survey about people feeling safe in our community. So I credit our law enforcement community, our ambulance service, and our fire department. I had to say fire and law enforcement in the same sentence, so is that okay? Okay.
Oh, I have it.
You're allowed to go. Better city communication, and this isn't necessarily, this is the thing that Austin isn't doing, he to promote the ability to do the worldwide web, internet, et cetera. Communication with phones, this is, we have to find a way to not just communicate in a single plan, right? It isn't just a piece of paper, it's not just a website, it's not Facebook, it's not Twitter, Instagram, it's not a single medium, but it's something where we can say it once and we can replicate it throughout the community so that people can see it, hear it, understand it, and feel comfortable with it, so. When you look at it, people are very satisfied with safety events. They like the events in our community. They like the community feel. There's still some things we need to put in place with respect to safety infrastructure. When you see that, I'll explain that further in just another slide. And then communication, obviously, we can find better ways for us to get the word out. So those were the surveys. So when we look at the survey, we look at the things that we understand about what's important to the community. It gives us 5 different pillars of a strategic plan. These things all make sense to the average consumer, the average person that's reading this. We're gonna have to add some context, and on the following slides, you'll see what I mean by thriving community development, safety, quality of life, heritage, and innovation. Some of these things I think are absolutely critical and are things that we have to probably put higher on the priority list. When we talk about community development, talk about economic prosperity, those things have to happen. If they don't happen, several of the other things that you're going to see within this plan probably aren't as important. So these are the 5 elements. I'm now going to take an opportunity to walk through what each one of these means to me, to the council, to you, to our community. So thriving economic development. And again, we have a great opportunity here to do some very interesting things over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, because we are uniquely geographically situated. We're not in the backyard of Sioux Falls. We're not in the backyard of Sioux City. We're a little bit further out. That's great because we can maintain our own self identity. But when it comes to bringing businesses to town, how exactly is it that we do that? We know that, again, part of that community development starts with childcare. So we want to make sure that we prioritize investments in ways that we can add capacity to our current childcare system. We've only got about 50 spots right now. As recently as maybe 4 years ago, there were probably 130. When the Methodist Church was open, when Kayla Shug was open, because Kayla had 12-ish, probably, yeah. And nobody blames Kayla, because Kayla done a great job with healthcare benefits. And you know, we talk to a person like Ross Davis who has little kids running around with feet on them every day. It's like, you're saying you're doing that. So we know we want to be able to lean into childcare. Childcare makes everybody in community better, because if you're working, you have a place for your small people to go, your grandchildren to go. And then as we prepare them for the next level, as they matriculate to the school system, we know that there are certain preparatory standards that we want to be able to abide by. So it's not just straight up childcare. We need to be able to offer options. Sometimes it's going to be in-home, and some people are going to be perfectly comfortable with that. But we know we also need probably to examine ways to build a formal center. We know we already have one, but not only build and invest in that one, but maybe even look at another and look at some level of competition. downtown, downtown's, as we know, there's several businesses downtown there for sale, buildings for sale. There's been a little bit of a revolution. I give Cream and Sugar some props because they started the most recent round of small businesses coming into downtown. At one point in time, it was Cream and Sugar, it was Cava Rose, it was Rainy Day, it was the Wake and Bake. Trying to think, yeah, just of those, and then most of the other businesses were able to stay. Obviously, Cava, they shut down, they're trying to operate a truck fire, right? Yeah, not a great thing, so, but, we hope that moves to the best, but. We know we want to invest in downtown, at the same time, if we are able to look at the facade, the front end, what you see from the street. We know that there are gonna be people driving through, that they're going to be attracted to that town. We know that by building the new development on the north side of town, we shift the geographic center of our community to the northeast slightly, there's gonna be more traffic. As 46 finally opens and it's more fully open where we have traffic from Iowa, we know some of that traffic is going to be absorbed by the new road, like from Inwood out to I-29 again. But we're still gonna have a lot of traffic once 29 gets to the point, or it should be 46 gets to the point where it's, passable. Right now, you're taking your life in your own hands, and so. So with more traffic downtown and finding ways to get downtown, they're talking about Sioux Falls, and one of the reasons Sioux Falls is a growing community is because they have a lot of residential area right in a very dense area downtown. We don't know the right way and the wrong way to do that. We know that we're Midwesterners, we run a lot of space, but there's got to be a way for us to look at not only looking at the facade of these downtown businesses, but also kind of looking at who we bring into the community. Several different folks want a full service family restaurant. And as I read that comment, obviously that was a theme, but that was one of those where I read it and I said, I know we have 13 places in Beresford to eat. Yes, they may not be an Emily's of the past, for those of you that remember Emily's, out by Berg's. Actually, were they right on Berg's? Can't remember where Emily's, Jen over there, yeah.
John Wilson, Jed.
Yeah, but you could go there, morning, you go there 10 o'clock then. And so, but this is also one, when I read this, I see this is tough because this is private development. This is a company that's probably gonna do some analysis. They're going to let their artificial intelligence and their algorithms do an analysis and say, you don't have enough traffic, you don't have enough population. There may be ways that we can help them, but we really can't jump in and absolutely bring in that restaurant. We can talk to them and try bringing a Perkins to the city of Beresford, probably a tough stuff, right? So, but something that a lot of people want, so we're gonna look at options to do that. Walking and bike trail, there were several folks that want a walking and bike trail. Said, well, I hope they know we already have some existing infrastructure in town. Some expansion of that on a reasonable scale, I think is a good thing because people want to be outside and want to take advantage of our parks. When we went through the recent storm event, there were several people that wanted to be in the parks, but they couldn't. I think Mike Anson's the one that gave you the term widowmakers. There were some of those trees that were up high, that it was not safe for kids to be in the park for 2-3 full days, right? So, park people like the parks, they like the pool, they want to be able to get there. So I think we need to find a way to get people outside, because the more that they're outside in the months that you reasonably can be outside, the healthier they're going to be, and so we need to be able to do that. And then bringing 100 new residents in 5 years. We fill that line, and we're not gonna fill the new development in 5 years, right? If we do that, would be the record pace. But selling 5 to 7 homes up there in buildings, and then having people see what that's going to look like, painting the picture of what that could be, I think it's a good thing, and it gets people to the point where they're gonna understand that we're adding residents to our school district. We are bringing people into the community. When we talk about safety and quality of life, we want to make sure that everybody in town feels safe. Now, I think, and again, this was reflected in the survey, when you look at our law enforcement colleagues, when you look at the fire department, when you look at our ambulance service, when you look at other public safety folks, I think those things are intact. I think we just need to continue to find ways to promote safety. Several comments where people wanted to find ways to promote pedestrian safety. So when we go across 46, when Brecken and Brindley want to cross, now they're old enough now that they're pretty wise to the roads, wise to the roads of the world, but when they walk off 46, we know nobody drives 30 miles an hour on Highway 46. They're all driving 40, 45. That's Mike's on patrol. That's dangerous, right? To come over the hill, there's some places where the vision's not great, where the view's not great, so we need to find a way to maybe put up for anybody that's been near Sanford in the past year, crosswalks that at least let people know that they need to slow down and look for people that are crossing the street. Because we would want those kids on the north side and the Lincoln County side of Beresford to feel comfortable getting to the pool during the day. We want parents to be able to feel comfortable with their kids going to school. So in addition to crosswalks, safe routes to school, parks, trails, recreation. So if we have opportunities to improve what we've already got, we've done a tremendous amount of work in the past few years. There's always going to be opportunity for us to continue to lean forward with respect to outdoor activities. And I think people love that. A couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, I implemented the health officer position in the health council. That group hasn't been as active as I would have liked them to have been. And again, I'm poking them a little bit to come up with some ideas on things that they can do. One example of what they are doing and the kind of stuff that probably need to replicate or at least grow. My wife and a couple of other folks, Anita, they take advantage of using space in the library that Jane has graciously given us to offer a class a couple days a week where they bring people in to help them focus on mobility, being stronger, feeling more confident as you move into their 7th, 8th, 9th decade of life. And so when I look at EMS statistics for the city of Beresford, the number one thing that we're called for in the city of Beresford for an ambulance is a hall. And about 80% of those are residents that are above the age of 70, 75. So we need to look at ways to promote health and get people to the point where they're able to, again, live their best life. So that's safety, quality of life, heritage and innovation. This is a balance, right? Again, I talked a little bit about it in the beginning, but I think pulling at the thread that allows us to understand where we came from, what this community has looked like in the past, whether the least things have happened here over the years. And you see the two pictures there, and then I balanced that with the Beresford Tel logo, because they, to me, represent one of the areas of our community that helps us facilitate innovation. And innovation doesn't necessarily have to be tech. Sometimes it can be a different way to do business, right? And when we say innovation, data centers and electric and stuff like that. I asked Mike to look at solar at one point in time, and he went and did an initial analysis and said, just doesn't look great, right? That is one style of innovation, but did an analysis and it didn't look like it was gonna be right for the community, but public arts, our cultural identity. So when you're downtown, the folks that have the law practice that sits on the corner across from redesigns, here's some sort of ones. Still, here's some sort of ones. Yeah. Their mural is fantastic. A lot of people like that, but it's getting a little older. The artwork that's on Curious Cuts and Curls is there. It was a solid project for our art projects. It's great art, but it's also kind of tough. And my ability to interpret said art is tough. Maybe we could tie that together and build something else out on Carrie's wall. And then Seminary Church, which I would call that art, they did some things along the thing there, along the sidewall. There may be ways to kind of revise that so that it looks nicer down there. I'm not saying it doesn't look nice, but it's just ties together. Has anybody been in Centerville in the past few years? Downtown Centerville, they have some great pictures of old Centerville. 10-foot by 5-foot metal frames that are stuck to a wall downtown, similar to the pictures that you see here of downtown Beresford, and I don't know the exact years there. They're probably out in the library, but something like that people could go to and say, wow, this is pretty interesting. Because you see some of those older pictures of downtown Beresford, you can see the thriving community that it was. And those are the kinds of things, if we, again, promote that, maybe an opportunity for us to continue with ways to do that in the future. Collaborative governance. Building and establishing trust is a very critical and difficult thing. I spent an hour on this phone this morning with the CIO of Vera Health, and we have 356 employees kind of scattered across South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, and we talked a little bit about trust and establishing trust and making sure that people will see you and say, I believe that they're going to do what they said they're going to do. And once you make a promise, you make sure that you follow through on that promise. So that's one of the things that we need to do as a community. So we do a pretty good job of communicating, I think, but again, it's all ways to improve it. So newsletters, updates, maybe it's in paper form, maybe it's in a form on the World Wide Web. Maybe we find additional social media channels that we can leverage to speak to different crowds within our community. Going and being able to talk to people so that they feel comfortable with the messages that we're carrying forward. Regular town halls, I have hosted 2 thus far. The first one we had about 6, the second one I think it was just Josh and I, right? And my wife, so there were the 3 of us, and so. But I did take advantage of the fact that as I was sitting there, I had a few folks that had let me know that I would have come. But it's something, it was middle of the day, right? So I flipped on Facebook Live. Well, that Facebook Live video that I put there several months ago now has had 1,000 views. And so people wanted to hear some of the updates that we were talking about. So that may be one way that we promote communicating with citizens of the community. In my podcast, how many do I have now? Am I over 200 yet?
Yeah, sure. Reach, yeah.
Thousands. So, find a way to, if there are people in our community that ask us to do things, like I heard Ben and Jerry talking earlier, you know, Ben's here, you know, he's got that portion of the year where it's warm and there's golfers on the golf course. Everybody's got a bright idea, right? Everybody wants something a little bit different. They want something this way or that way. If Ben had a tracker of everything he's probably been asked to do, it would be pages and pages and pages. We know that there are specific things that we've been asked to do as a community. And again, we know there's some very strong voices in our community. And I was saying earlier, there's one person in our community lately that's had my number on speed dial. And they have beat me up. Beat me up and give me some compliments on different things, but in this instance, where we're going to build out a way to say, you asked us to do this, and we did it. I want to make sure that we're doing things that speak to a broad swath of our community, right? Not just a sleeping little gets the degree, so we know we have opportunities to be able to put things in motion for a larger portion of our community. So when you asked it, we did it, some way to give people an ability to understand we're doing what we've been asked to do. And then obviously the department evaluation process, you know, last year I worked with Jerry, you guys were on the working end of how we kind of revised that process, but it was designed to be more objective to say, hey, these are some of the goals I had on the front end of the year. These are the ways I met those goals. Because in the end, a lot of what's going to be incorporated into our strategic plan will end up becoming some of the things that you guys, if it's a safety initiative that has to do with law enforcement, it's going to end up in, you know, Mike's in his space. If it has to do with our electric department, the distribution of electricity, gonna end up on that Mike's, not that Mike, that Mike. So we know that our communication from the leadership team to the department head is critical to make sure that all of this is wrapped into a plan. So. Collaborative governance, only a few slides to go. Economic prosperity. So when we think prosperity, we think about again, the first goal or the first pillar was thriving economic development. You think about prosperity and basically creating a place where everybody can reach their max potential, whatever that is, right? We know that there's a wide array of ways to define that. We need to be able to create opportunity for people in our community. So, sustainable growth, bringing in businesses. We know we've got phenomenal Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for joining us tonight. But we want to be able to attract businesses where instead of maybe driving to Sioux Falls for a $30 an hour job, you could stay in town for a $25 to $30 an hour job. Less miles on the car, you're able to stay in the community. Your kids have a ball game in the evening, you're able to go. Bring in light manufacturing, agricultural technology, small tech. I think it was Nathan, and if it's not, please correct me, but Nathan and I were talking just the other day, and we're a city that has boundaries, but we have a school district that has an area. I think better integrating with our school district and agricultural community that surround us is a great thing because there are things that we can do mutually help each other. So if we're helping the farmers in the field, the folks that are raising cattle, they're going to eventually be able to support us. Only because the Mullins have a gigantic cattle farm, right? We know that that's important because that's the kind of thing that's going to be able to more people coming into the community, better integration, better interconnectedness with, the folks that are in this area. We know that the corner of 46 and 29 is a very critical place. I think Will's told me on multiple occasions that he used to drive to Sioux City to work as an electrician, right? And he'd come back and he'd see 4 cars. Maybe this was before 29, and he'd see 4 cars on the way back to Sioux City. Now, how far do you have to go on 29 to see 4 cars? 300 feet. And so that's a gigantic, big, busy interstate, but what are the right ways to pull people off to bring that here? And I'm going to tell the story about the VRBO in just a second, because that's a great story. But we have to find ways to bring people into town. Pop-up shops, farmers markets. I think the Chamber of Commerce is doing a phenomenal job in kind of promoting those different events that occur down the road. This next line item that you see, 10 new businesses, not necessarily downtown. I've got downtown included there. There was a few council members and a few leaders in our community that saw us and said, you know, it's gonna be hard to pack 10 businesses down there, and it's gonna be hard in general to really completely revitalize downtown, bring people into the downtown space. But if we know we can bring in a couple of manufacturing businesses, a couple of other small businesses downtown, then we're gonna put ourselves in the right position. And then the last one, tourism. So a great story that I was given the other day. Nathan's wife, Kristen, decided to renovate part of their property the other day into a VRBO, place to stay. Out in the country, right? And they opened it, they sort of walked into it with some, they weren't 100% sure it was the right thing to do. They're like, nah, let's do this. And they opened it, and on the first weekend or first week, you had guests from Maryland. I said Jersey earlier. Maryland, they flew here, flew to Sioux Falls, got the car, came down. They were sitting out back in the evening, they were in Sioux Stars for the first time. You know, they're in an area, a metropolitan area where you don't just look at the Sioux Stars, they're not. Those sorts of things, like the home that Alice Munson mom owns down there. Those are small little vignettes, but I think those are the kinds of things that we should pay attention to, because those are the kinds of things that we could potentially bring people into our area, our town, to promote the great thing that we're sure. So I think that's a great story. Hopefully I didn't. So those are the things that I've talked about with respect to the pillars. Everything that you've seen up to this point in time is a call to action. Each one of us here has a responsibility to try to make sure that some of these things occur in our community to help promote who we are, what we are, and what we're able to do to the citizens in Beresford. Some of the stuff isn't gonna happen overnight. We know that. It's gonna take years, right? Because the resourcing that has to occur through the budgetary process and the appropriation process isn't an overnight process. Making sure that we're responsibly spending tax dollars on the right things that speak to community priorities is the way that we need to operate. We need to push forward. We know that together we have an opportunity to make a difference. Everyone in this room has an opportunity to influence the way that we operate going forward, whether it's through the school district, whether it's through South Dakota Youth School, whether it's through the leadership of our city. So with that, it's only 3:37. So we have an opportunity to work through a couple of questions, talk about things that you saw that made sense or don't make sense, because there are inevitably probably parts of what you saw here that were like, well, I don't understand that. And it's perfectly appropriate in this forum to ask questions. I want to start kind of where we finished the last hour with was, and I talked a little bit about this on the vision slide, but part of what we need to do is we need to be able to find a way to create an identity. I think we already have an identity, but we need to find a way to that makes Beresford unique. You know, it's not just another small town in South Dakota. A lot of these small towns in South Dakota have very unique aspects of who they are and what they are. I think we do as well. So that's something that has to be woven into the plan. So what are your initial thoughts? What makes sense? What doesn't make sense? Anything that surprised you? But Tyler, you guys work with communities across Southeast South Dakota. you've probably seen places that are more successful, less successful. You know, and obviously there's some communities that are thriving, some that are probably dwindling a little bit. I feel like we're a community that's on the verge of growing, albeit slow, thank goodness. You know, how does this balance against, you know, the things that you see in other communities? Consistent?
Yeah, so let me back up a little bit too. So just quick background on me, I grew up primarily on Ground City, tribal members from Sisseton, I went to school in Vermillion. I got really good at the community life, 29, I passed in Beresford, not ever stopped me from living Sioux Falls. With this job with Sioux Metro and being able to get to know you guys and meet your community a lot more in the last year, since last summer. I will tell you, I have been so impressed with Beresford. And I think a lot of the vision and the momentum and the people and the amenities and everything, it's just, for me, it feels like Beresford has just been in my face this last year, and it's really exciting to see how much you guys, I love talking about you guys with, and I hear it from all sorts of random South Dakotans and different interactions, when I tell them about what we do and who we serve, and Beresford is one of our communities on the south end of our territory, and they're like, oh, it's the most beautiful nine-hole golf course in the state, you know, and I know a lot of people that grew up here. I'm seeing more and more people that are from Beresford, and so there's pride in there. But I would say to your point of having kind of a vision, how can we stand out, you know, just being a small town? Because I've been so pleasantly surprised, but I had never made intentionally or had a reason to get off the interstate to actually come in and see Beresford's a lot bigger than I thought. And this is a community I can see myself living in because of how all the different boxes that you guys check. And so I think you guys are totally on the right track. I think that this is a neat opportunity for you to grow the way you want to grow. In a way that, again, kind of respects everything you love about it without it being let's recruit all these outsiders to come in. It's, you're doing it this way is gonna be a way that you're attracting the people that are either coming home back to Beresford or are gonna make Beresford their home, and that's gonna be their identity too.
Tom, you had a comment earlier when you talk about people deciding to pick Beresford. I think it was either Tom or Larry. People are coming back to, people are coming, you know, they start here, they go away for a few years. They get some experience, you know, Army, Marine Corps, community college, et cetera. They work in Sioux Falls for a few years and they come back. It's very unlikely that people stay here their entire lives. Some do. But yeah, what are the ways that we bring people, what are the ways we bring people off the interstate? You know, we know social media is pretty powerful. You know, if I'm driving down the interstate and I see that there's a 5-star restaurant off, you know, and it's time to stop. Fortunately, I don't have little people anymore, but when we're on a road trip, there's times when it's like time to stop. You see a 5-star restaurant or a 5-star coffee shop, and you know, like with cream and sugar, everybody says it looks like, you know, they got a nice motif in there. If they know they can get beans roasted in the facility, they can go to rainy day, go to an award-winning library for a few minutes, take a break, things like that. I don't know, how do we pull people off the interstate? Beyond leveraging internet, social media, signage. We talked at one point in time about a digital sign. But what did we ever do with our digital sign project? That was just a proposal. We were gonna replace the sign down by Slumberland.
Yeah, I think chamber comments a lot for every year. I don't know where that, yeah.
The who? The,
Chamber.
oh, yeah.
It talks about how, we just asking questions on who's in charge of it.
Hmm.
We update it. If we
Yeah.
want to, what should we put on it? And I think that goes back to like, what is our identity of Beresford, what do we want it to be? And I think chamber wise, we've been trying to like figure out that too. So to figure that, everybody is trying to figure that out because we're like, are we missing something? But yeah, that was just kind of the vision that we had. And we had one contact at the time. I can't remember who that was. For a billboard, but I can find out.
I'm sure those digital billboards like the one by where the old Ready Mix now Alcester Towing is, I'm sure those aren't cheap. Do you own your sign or is that a city sign that's out in front of
That's the city's sign, for the board, but all the banks here in town.
Oh, okay. First Dakota, so. It'd be great to have a big digital billboard out there, but I bet it would be a gazillion dollars, and so, yeah.
I don't think that people realize the vision of Beresford years ago to have our own city utilities and telephone. You know, those dollars come back into our city pockets, what we make. And that's, gives us beautiful pools, parks, libraries, and amenities that many towns just can't afford because that's just strictly their minimal tax dollars that nobody needs. Profits that come from those have served Beresford for years and years for improvements and things that they have that other small towns can't.
It definitely can give you a little bit more of that edge or incentive when it comes to recruiting the right business too. So housing, I mean, you guys are, the housing opportunities here on all levels, everything follows rooftops. And so, you know, having housing opportunities too, that leads to the right residents, that helps keep your school filled, having a good school goes a long way as well. Jobs in the industry, you know, having industrial land that is shovel ready. Some communities are struggling to even acquire land or they're landlocked by, you know, private landowners that don't care about the legacy of the city, don't live here, aren't interested in selling or doing anything different. So you guys have that going for you too, proximity, good public safety, and then the business community and the downtown feel and where you guys are at, you have a lot to be proud of, and there's some really exciting things that can take you to the next level. You know, I know a lot of people from Centerville, like they come here because of, you know, even just having Casey's, right? I mean, some of the retail names and stuff too, but Centerville, at least for people in this corner of the state, you know, instantly, they've never been to Centerville before, and they've heard of it, they think of the donuts, right? I mean, having something that, maybe it is a mini Eiffel Tower, I don't know, you know, it's something to maybe it's a park community, maybe it is some of those stellar restaurants and pieces that can attract either local traffic or tourism traffic. With SDJ, we cover Southeast South Dakota tourism membership for your community too. And some of the data is showing that this corner of the state is competing with the Black Hills on tourism, and in some cases exceeding it too. Another thing that I'm looking, I need to follow up. I got a bunch of notes and ideas for how to check out some of this stuff, but I know the Badlands and Wind Cave are working on a national designation to be a certified dark sky for stargazing. We're in a vacuum here in the upper Midwest. If they can get that designation, and if a community like Beresford can also tie into that community and check the right boxes, is it dark enough and whatnot too, that's a whole nother tourism aspect of kind of a fluid people that want to stop and see skies that they can't see anywhere else. So there's a lot of them.
The noise at night, you know, there's some nights when I can't quite hear the interstate and it's really quiet. Some nights it feels like I hear the guys out Jake breaking and running into the rumble strips, you know, it's like they're next to me. But some nights it's nice and quiet, you know, and when there's not a thunderstorm that's taken down 20% of our tree canopy, you know, weather here is, yes, we understand in the winter it's not perfect, but
As far as just a very specific example, just go back to what you're saying, you've never been through town, we've driven by it X number of times, but you never stopped. And we didn't have no idea where it was. Electric charging station, fast charging, we got the electric utilities. Is that something that and the thing is, it's a captured audience for 20 minutes or whatever time it takes to charge that vehicle. Is there somewhere we could strategically place that, whether downtown or out on 46 next to some of the businesses, they could get people off just for charging and be able to see the community.
we actually have one.
We have one down here.
Yeah.
Do we have a fast charger?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, how, from a power distribution perspective, how hard is it? Like, I don't know what those little, like I see the one that's behind Hy-Vee on Marion.
Part of this is cost,
Yeah,
you know, Jerry's just gonna put in a couple,
yeah,
you just went through his,
yeah.
Well, there was,
There was grant money that was designated, that may have gone away, but, I don't know if that's still there or not.
And some of those people, especially if you're tourism, you're traveling through, I mean, you're searching, just like you're planning ahead, if I ever actually went weekend, planning ahead to know where the gas stations are, but they come off the interstate, right? To make sure that you have those spots, there's not enough of those charging stations. In this area, I know like Brandon, for example, they're working on retail, they're working on the I-90 Plaza, right, as you come from Minnesota. There's no charger stations unless you get to a Walmart or a Hy-Vee in Sioux Falls. And so they're trying to find a way to capture that audience as soon as they get the order. To park for 30 minutes and they shop at a, restaurant or retailer we have there. As a way to do the economic activity. But yeah, doing something like that downtown where they can get out, it's a 2-for-1. Good idea.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the publicly available funds for projects like that in the past few years have dried up, right? Then, right, wrong, or indifferent, some, some funding going away and or being limited. We understood that was potentially gonna happen with the change in administrations. But there got to be ways perhaps from an economic development perspective to look at that. I know that I've heard that people will plan, if you guys have ever been in Europe, Europe's dog friendly. You go anywhere and there's a dog at the foot of people in a restaurant. Now, there's a lot of Americans that don't like that and perfectly understand that. But dog friendly businesses, some people will plan their trips based on the availability of a dog park, which we have one, which is it on Google Maps as a dog park, or how's it listed? And then like rainy, if I walked into rainy day with my dog, would you kick me out? Maybe. Oh,
Soon forbidden. So
Yeah.
that's what is allowed. If you're closed off kitchen.
Ah.
yes, And they have to leash usually is the rule of that. But outdoor seating is helpful for that. I have that.
because like on Google Maps, doesn't have the dog park there. Maybe we need to. Because I think if people saw that, there's not much business right there, right by the park, but they would see the park and that's a great place for them to go for humans, for dogs, for everybody else. So. Any other parts of the plan that stuck out? Again, I'm gonna back up a little bit because I'll tell you, I'm not to break the out. As we look at these, when we talk about 5 pillars, all of these are critically important, but I believe that 1 and 5 are the most important, right? Yes, we have to ensure safety, but I think we're already at a point where we can. But heritage innovation, it's great. It's gonna be one of those things that may draw people in, but not as important as thriving economic development and economic prosperity, right? So because both of those complement each other and they enable the other things. The other things, again, they have to be in good order, but would you guys agree? What do you think from your perspective, Dr. Dagan, from the school district perspective? Are guests that reach out there for opportunities with school students for students, but
Well, we don't exist without kids, without seats, so. Ways to attract families that will grow what you can do, should have demographic age lower than what it probably is right now.
I guess I don't know what the average age is right now, but it
feels like old.
yeah.
But yeah, more kids we have, the more much down there are, the more we talk. Get down here, down here, you can start young, have kind of baseline knowledge. And provide opportunity for help us to retract it, attract what we think. There you go, stuff, and that will have a living community, have them, so.
Makes perfect sense. One of the other primary points too was we got about 7 minutes and then we'll welcome another group of. I invited all the city employees and I told them I'd buy out group. So I said, I saw a few of them this afternoon. That means one, and that will be after 5 o'clock, because at 5 o'clock, we're gonna give out a few awards. And you guys are gonna get the benefit that the first group had to hear the spiel the second time. You're getting it after to hear this second time, so if you hear something that I say that's different, or something that we need to focus on, please let me know what that is. One of the things I'll, finish with just a little bit is I think it was interesting to see how much of a focus there was on improving downtown. And we had a great conversation at the end of hour one about, that's just not, imagine I could go buy the Irish Twins was for sale for what? 140, 129. I don't remember what it was for sale for. Is that right? Next to you, is that one over? Irish Twins, two, they were 129, 140. Nice little storefront, unique, kind of neat little place there in town. At the same time, when you got to move into a business and potentially replace all the plumbing, all the electrical work, the floor, if you're gonna move into commercial freezers or something like that for a restaurant, I wondered if how they ever have to work when they move in all their kitchen equipment. I don't know, those are the kinds of things that you have to think about from the business perspective, and when you buy a building for $130,000 or $140,000, and then you've got to invest, immediately turn around and invest $150,000. Well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Because I would think places, I just mentioned this last hour too, but a place like B&T's, like it'd be great for them to find a place to set up, but it's much easier for them to operate. It's much easier to operate out of the truck, right, than it is to operate out of the building that Randy Day's at, and how do we, we know that from an infrastructure, right, we probably need to focus on water and sewer. And when we do that, because those, the water main is deep, right? Streets, yeah, we have an opportunity to make them slightly more walkable. Downtown Vermillion, for those of you that haven't been there in a while, they've done a really nice job down there, nice big murals. It's a little bit of a hodgepodge business, things like that, but it's pretty hopping, there's certain points of the year where Vermillion's very nice, and I noticed the other day their sidewalks and their transitions were really nice. There were several comments in the survey about sidewalks, and Jerry and I talked about this quite a bit. Most of those sidewalks it's incumbent upon the resident to help upgrade them, but if you go knock on Mr. Alex Munson's door and say, I need concrete, it's like, it's not cheap, right? And so it's sort of a tough thing. There are places where we think the city can help in those transitions and making it walkable and safe and things like that, but we can't replace everybody's sidewalk. So, but yeah, so I'll finish with downtown, because again, so number one, I think the most important thing is childcare. Number two, we need to find a way to bring people downtown. There's got to be some innovative ways as you guys think through this, because you'll be on the golf course in a few minutes hitting golf balls that way, instead of that way. Yeah. As you're there and you're thinking through this, as you guys are out tomorrow, as you're checking out books to young children tomorrow. If you think of ways that we can improve what you've seen here, please let me know what that is.
I always think of economic prosperity. Facebook, really the best thing we can do is look inward. Where are we shopping at? I've lived in towns of 2,000 people that don't have a grocery store.
Yeah.
Don't have a hardware store, don't have a movie yard. But it's awful easy to go to Hy-Vee or Menards or bank out of town.
Yeah.
Because I've always banked here, it's easier,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if we don't support town businesses and stuff that are in town. It's hard to attract new businesses in town too. My kids, first thing they ask grandkids, they want to go to the library. I don't know what you got, I don't read. I read a book once. But they come down, they want to go.
It's okay, we got books with pictures too.
Yeah. How many school towns in 2000 have their own school?
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
A small number of people. If you point out where there's four fingers pointing inwards at you, that, it's up to us to make the changes.
What's the holiday right around Thanksgiving? It's Black Friday, it's small business. Well, small business Saturday, yeah. Cyber Monday, small business Saturday, so. The Chamber's done a couple things where they promoted some of the small business, but I think, shop local, think global, shop local, stuff like that. And
Dollar in town terms 9 times, you take it out, I don't care if you take it Centerville, it stays in Center. Take it in Alcester, it stays in Alcester.
Yeah.
It doesn't, in town, they say it rotates 9 times, and there's a big value there.
Yeah, I mean, the morning after the storm, I think Jeff Olson probably sold more chainsaws than he's ever sold in his life, and so I know they're, wow, so. Thank you very much for participating, we've got about a minute till the next hour starts. Mr. Ben Ryder and his team have graciously, Mr. Ryder himself, actually put some lemonade, some water out. And then again, at the end of the hour, we'll break a few minutes before, and we're gonna welcome in a few additional people, we're gonna do a few awards.
Are we all city employees? I just want to clarify that.
You have to have a stand. Well, oh, yeah.
Let's see if there's one way to move people all good.
It's great.
That's some blood. Here.
You know?
Yeah, I got it. Take your. Yeah. Okay, right. Yeah. Is that what you guys yeah, we would.
Sit by the
Yeah, I didn't know, there.
Yeah.
Never the back.
I'm a squeaky third wheel on my team as well. I would say. I bet so.
Are you
Put down on my record. So. Oh, yeah.
No,
Right there by the city hall.
Yes.
It's great. Yeah, I don't really talk either. You. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and jump in. So there's enough people here that you won't necessarily do personal introductions, but I do want to call out certain crews. So I have our telecommunications group here, the water guys himself, team downtown.
For a couple of minutes.
Hi, Rita.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Miss Tony Harris from Harris Hotel as well. Mr. Andrew Bowden, who is our fire chief and also a full-time captain at Sioux Falls Fire and Rescue. Library team, Retail, Public Works, Streets, South Dakota Municipal League, this is, Jessica Carr is here, it's an organization we work with. They sponsor several conferences throughout the state where we work with them on, how to be better elected officials, how to be better, finance officers, things like that. They do a great job of, creating some consistency. The leadership team of Beresford, South Dakota, finance officer, city attorney, city administrator, city council. School team, elementary and high school principal, new high school principal, Dr. Murray, thanks for joining us. Our public works team, electric department, parks, golf course, First Dakota. And law enforcement team, got to sit right next to each other. So when we have a beer, you're gonna probably not be able to have, yeah, just slip that off. Leader of our electric department, Mr. Ben Ryder of our world famous 9-hole golf course. Teresa Megan, who is former city councilman, PRCD, CPA in town, million things, right? Yes, Shouse owner, that's very unique, right? A lot of people like that. And Shania Roseboom, who owns Rainy Day Coffee. So, thank you all very, very much for being here. I appreciate it very much. What I hope to do in the next hour is give you a great opportunity to see where I think we as a community want to go. And why do we get people together to look at strategy? And as I was, I'm gonna apologize, you guys, you're here for the third time. There was a guy that played for the New York Yankees in the 30s, right? 40s? Yogi Berra? 40s, okay. Very, very colorful guy. He came up with the saying that you guys have always heard this, it's not over till it's over. Another saying that Yogi Berra was famous and credited for was, if you don't know where you're going, you might end up someplace else. And as I think about that, and I think about the reason for developing a strategy that each one of us can look at and say, yep, that makes sense for me, that makes sense for our community, it makes sense for the people that rely on us. I think the strategy is very, very important. I spent my whole career in the military trying to work with people on ways to achieve strategic objectives. And sometimes I'm sitting in a room full of a bunch of infantry guys, I'll very affectionately call them knuckle draggers. You know, not the brightest guys in the room, but we would make and create strategic objective that spoke to the mission we needed to accomplish so that we knew exactly where we were headed. And that's exactly what I want to be able to do today. So I'll use a couple of different slides in this presentation to give you some feel for kind of what I think our priorities need to be. At the same time, I also want to let you know that I did, several of you probably saw that I issued a community survey. We did have 72 respondents. Some of you guys are sitting close to the folks that have handouts. There is a one-pager that if you'll just pass around, you'll see that in those 72 responses that we got from folks that answered that questionnaire, the questionnaire was a little bit longer. There's some great feedback in there, right? It allows us to validate some of the things that we understand to be priorities for our community. At the same time, it also challenges some of the things that, like, for instance, I think communication is going very well, right? Like after the storm, several people pulled me aside and said, hey, we appreciate the updates that occurred on Facebook. At the same time, Facebook is not the perfect medium for everybody. So we know that we need to create a layered communication strategy that involves the technology that we know we can deliver to our community. And so what I'm going to do is walk you through just a couple of different bits and pieces. The thing that I want to start with, though, is a vision. Again, Yogi Berra said it. If you don't know where you're going, you might end up someplace else. We have to be able to paint a picture of what's important to us, what involves our community identity, what each one of us could look at and easily understand. It's like the elevator pitch, you know, what's the mission of a housekeeper at NASA, right? His mission isn't to sweep the floors, his mission is to put people on the moon, right? Each one of us has an opportunity to be able to help the citizens of our community live their best life. So when you see this, and one of the things that I've said on a couple of occasions now is that there are elements of our vision that some people would see and be like, yeah, what does that mean, right? Forward thinking. Sometimes people are going to see that and they're potentially going to interpret that in different ways. But I would believe that there are things that we're doing in our community where we're leaning forward and pushing the envelope with respect to how we can make things happen, the right way for things to happen, the wrong way for things to happen. When we see growth, I've already said this 2 times, I'll say it a 3rd time. I live with a little blonde lady about this tall. She doesn't want Beresford to grow. She says that all the time. And, you know, I have to counter her with what are the right ways that we need to grow. And now she's, of course, worried about the 7th Street project and kids zipping up and down 7th Street when it eventually is complete sometime down the road. But we know that we need to be able to look at growth and understand what that means to each one of us. We know we're not Beresford and T, right? We're not in the backyard of Sioux Falls. We've got a little bit of distance. We are uniquely geographically located such that we can control the way, we've got some levers in front of us that we can control the way things happen. We've got our new development, we've got places for people to live, but we know that there are things that we have to be able to do. So that's the vision that I would give you and it revolves around the values that involve community spirit, which again, through the lens of when our school system, Dr. Dagan and Mr. Nathan Jensen were sitting here the hour before, you know, when you go to a football game, which is gonna be over here in just a week or so, couple days, the kickoff cross country meet, which a lot of you, if you haven't seen, it's a pretty interesting event because it's a sea of humanity. It's easy to see the community spirit when you go to an event like that. I think there are other ways that we need to be able to find within our community to be able to show that community spirit and how we have the pride to be from Beresford. We have to look at growth in the right way. We have to be as transparent as possible. What I've said now on communications is 99.9% of what we transact as business at the city level, within our departments, within the community, should be transparent so that everybody has access to it, so that everybody understands the thought making behind the processes, because there's nothing easier than to make somebody angry than to make a decision behind closed door that should have probably involved members of the community, should have involved some thoughtful decision making, et cetera. Innovation, sometimes people are gonna read that and think, I don't necessarily need a bunch of new tech. I don't want Snapchat, right? Which I still don't use Snapchat to this day. Maybe it's because I'm a boomer. I don't know, but innovation doesn't necessarily have to be new tech. It can be new ways to look at doing something that we've done forever. So if there's new ways to allow us to lean forward, we want to be able to do that. We have to be able to preserve our heritage, right? And I've said this on multiple occasions, you know, this community was known as Paris, South Dakota from 1873 to 1884. There's very few people that really know that. We don't take advantage of that. I think there's ways that I think we could lean into that community identity. We know that there are parts of this community that from our heritage that we should be able to tell as a story to draw people into our community so that they not only want to visit here, but they also want to live here eventually. So that's our vision. So again, the survey was very impactful and it was a fantastic tool for us. It was great to reaffirm some of the things that we believe we understand. The thing that you see at the top of the list, childcare. And what I've done the last couple of times we've talked about this is I've tried to frame this as we now need to begin to consider childcare as infrastructure. We think of streets, we think of water mains, we think of sewer, we think of electrical, we think of communications as the critical infrastructure that allows a community to exist, right? You can't have a house out in the middle of nowhere if you don't have a way to get there. You don't have power to deliver, et cetera. We need to begin to consider childcare as a function of infrastructure, as the base of the pyramid, because if you don't perform, when you add more childcare to our community, not going to be able to do anything else, right? That is one of those things you have to be able to do. So childcare has to be number one. Affordable housing and rentals. Our new housing development on the north side of town, because of the way that it was constructed, we have to keep homes there affordable. Now, affordable, based on the way a lot of us grew up, you know, it's got to be under $410,000. Holy crap, that's a lot of money. But those twin homes up there will probably be significantly less than the twin homes that are pretty close to where I live, which are $500,000. Holy crap. We have to look at affordable options. We have to look at a way to revitalize downtown. And this is, again, this is information that I gleaned from the survey. People want pedestrian and traffic signals. So perhaps lights along 46 that slow people down so that they're not trying to run Brecken and Brindley over if they're trying to cross the Highway 46, those kinds of things. And then better city communication, and not necessarily the tech that allows us to deliver the communication, but the way that we deliver it. Maybe stuffing a single sheet of paper in with the bills, which we know, what does that cost us each time we do that? A single piece of paper in the mail? Like, $1,000, $1,000, probably a decent amount of money. How much, we put a piece of paper in the nail and bills.
Well, if the whole stage then.
That's supposed to go, yeah, so there's a cost associated. So, but some people, that may be the best way for them to consume that information, so we have to be able to do that. Some of the things that we saw with respect to quality of life in our community, very high level of satisfaction with safety in our community, thanks to our law enforcement colleagues, our fire department, our ambulance service. The events here in town, people love them. I think we need to continue to target that, to point to that, because that's something that allows us to better inform our identity, the community feel. People like that small town community, great opportunities in our community. There are things that we need to do from a safety infrastructure perspective and communication. When it says safety infrastructure, again, it points to the pedestrian and traffic safety, not necessarily some of our safety, the elements of our safety network or safety system. All right, so when we look at a strategy for our community, it boils down to 5 major pillars. Those 5 pillars, and one of the things, and I finished last couple hours with this, some of these are not like the others. 1 and 5, to me, have to be huge priorities. 2, 3, 4 priorities, things that we know are connected to everything else, but they are most certainly things that we have to be able to do as a city. Each one of these I'll define, each one of these I'll paint a picture of what it looks like. So when I say thriving community development, creating an opportunity where we know from an economic development perspective, our economic development chair / president of First Dakota, are the folks that were sitting here earlier, they're from Sioux Metro Growth Alliance. They're here specifically, they're here to focus on economic development. Childcare has to be a part of that. So we right now as a community probably only have about 50 spots. And that's, you balance that against, and 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we had probably 130, 140, and now we're down to 50, 60. We have to be able to add childcare because there are people that want to move to this community that don't necessarily want to be in the hustle and bustle of Sioux Falls, but they want a place to put their kids. So we have to be able to do that. Downtown, people want to revitalize downtown. Again, that is clearly evident in the survey. There's things I think that we can do, and there's things I think that we a little bit tougher. But facade improvements, grants where we can help people spruce up the front of their law practice or their shoes and pretty nasty to get that far about something. Things like that, where if there's part of a business that needs to be helped. And we'll talk a little bit later about some different things from the art perspective and things we can do downtown. Full service family restaurant. So this one's kind of tough for me. It was a tough pill to swallow because we have 13 places in the city of Beresford to get a meal. No, I say 13. Some of those might be on the west side of the interstate, so maybe 11. They're not like, for everybody that's been here for more than a couple of days, Emily's used to exist out there where Berg's is now, where Jet is. You could walk in Emily's at 5 o'clock in the morning, there's 10 o'clock at night, if you want to. Maybe we would call that the full service family restaurant. We know we have great restaurants now. We just, people seem to be very intent on something along those lines. Now, the right and wrong way to incentivize somebody to come to town, I don't know exactly what that looks like. That is definitely something we have to incorporate into the strategic plan. People reiterated that they want additional opportunities to be able to be outside, walking and bike trails. We have some comments in the survey said, we need a bike trail. I'm like, we're gonna have one. We need more, right? That's what they said. That's what they want. Those are the kind of things we need to look for opportunities to have, not only ways for people to recreate, get out, walk, stay healthy, but also to be able to perhaps offer alternatives to getting to school or to getting to the public library, getting downtown if they want to go get something at Cream and Sugar, rainy day, etc. And then build housing for 100 new residents. We already have that in motion. That's one of those strategic objectives that in the largest sense, we actually probably already have, I wouldn't say checked off, but we're getting close to being able to, we're putting things in motion for years now. A lot of the things that are already in motion here have been put in progress years ago. So, all right. Safety, quality of life. People want to be able to feel safe in the community that they live in, which they do. And the survey results, which I'll show Mike and Tyson, I'll show you guys. I'll send you the specific, those components. They were awesome. The scores were very high. People feel very safe from a law and legal enforcement perspective. Fire department does a phenomenal job. They know that being led by someone that is a full-time career firefighter is a good thing. And then nothing against TARS, which TARS gave us 46 years, but we now have a gentleman that does it on an everyday basis. Not only does that, but does other things for the city of Sioux Falls. Our ambulance service does okay too. The former director was a little flaky, but, pedestrian safety plans, crosswalks, we know that there are places within our community that, we could probably do better creating safe places for our kids to get across the street. Now, some of these kids, Jackson Shirt, who played baseball for me in the summer, why did he look that? He's got one of those little two-wheel motorized hot rods, and there are times when I see those guys zipping in and out. Now, I can't control the way Jackson uses his scooter and whatnot, but if we have opportunities where we know that those kids can use those in a safe area, or make sure they use their helmets, which we try to give out free helmets all the time, those are the kinds of things that we need to be able to do. Safe routes to school, work with business partners in the community to try to make sure that we know that if I send a kid to school, they're gonna get to the elementary school, to the junior high, to the high school. Parks, trails, recreation. Again, people were very complimentary of the services. I think that because we issued a survey kind of right after the storm, there were some people that expressed to me that they wanted to get right back in the park, right? They're so invested in being in that park on a daily basis that not being there for was it 2 full days?
Yeah.
2 days where, we had widow hangers. Mike, was that your turn? Was that your turn? Yeah, because Mike had the bucket up in the canopy, he was trying to bring down the big trees that presented a safety risk to the kids that were going to potentially be in the park. So the pool was closed for a day and a half, 2 days, parks were closed, but it made people realize what they have on an everyday basis, and so they wanted to be able to get back there. So parks, trails, recreation. About 18 months ago, about 2 years ago, I built that health officer position. And then I subsequently built a council to be able to help inform policy in the community on ways that we can be a healthier society. They haven't been quite as active as I want them to be, but I'll go ahead and I'll poke a few of them. My wife and Anita Dixon have been using the opportunity of the space that's been given to us by the library. They offer a class a couple times a week where they bring in folks that are in their 70s or 80s, and they focus on a mobility class. Because when I look at EMS statistics in our community, the number one call for service is a fall. And about 80% of those are people over the age of 70 years old. So if I can teach those folks how to be more mobile, how to be stronger, how to be better, then I can hopefully improve the overall health of our community. I say I, meaning us as a group. So those are the kinds of things that we need to focus on from the safety and quality of life perspective. When we think about heritage and innovation, and it's a healthy balance there, we need to be respectful where we come from. At the same time, we need to be able to focus on the future. What are the things that we can bring to the table that actually make sense? Again, Beresford's past is very rich. We need to be able to celebrate that. I've already suggested that we need to build a mini Eiffel Tower somewhere because we were Paris for 11 years. I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm not going to build it myself. I can't will. But maybe that's something that we look at. A walking tour of the very unique places that are in the town, like the Jewel House, like places along 3rd Street, places where businesses, you see the pictures there, used to exist. Some of these things that are very unique to the history of Southeast South Dakota. Smart City Tech, and Austin very rightly asked me, he's like, what I meant by that? Because that could mean a lot of different things, right? The city of Spencer, Iowa, immediately after the storms that they experienced last year, they found themselves in a position where it was tough for them to communicate with citizens, right? Not everybody's got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. They implemented an app, and they've had good success in using that app because it allows for push notifications. So if you're a citizen there and I need to send something out, storm updates, other things like that, public safety updates, if law enforcement's trying to track somebody down to the park, those kinds of things where we want to push out information quick, that app might be a good thing to do. At the same time, we have to look at the cost and balance that against what our community priorities are. Public art and cultural identity. Jane and I just had a real quick conversation here, but we know that mural that exists on the law practice that's downtown is awesome. And a lot of people like that. It's fading a little bit, and I'm not a painter. I'm not going to go up there, get my paintbrush out and work on it. But we know that there's some art across the street too on Curious Cuts and Curls. That's nice. It was part of a school project, but you look at it and you're like, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it means. Maybe we could tie that in with something else. We know we have some other art in town. Has anybody been in Centerville in the past couple of years? Seen the big pictures downtown? Have the nice big, it kind of look like old pictures like this. Imagine a 10-foot by 5-foot metal frame picture that's downtown. I think those are the kinds of things that would draw people downtown. I think people would see those and believe that those would be a reasonable investment into the aesthetic in our downtown area. All right. A few more and then we'll roll in this opportunity where you guys can ask me questions, poke holes in the plan. Collaborative governance, and I said this earlier, but 99.9% of what we do as a city, as a community should be transparent so that people feel like they trust what we're doing. When we say we're going to do something, we most often, we stick to that agreement. We're able to give people what they need on time, on budget, et cetera. Trust is a hard thing to be able to establish, but we have to be able to do that. Again, we feel like some communication has been good, but there's always ways to improve that. So digital, print, hosting town halls. Now I've had 2 town halls. The first one I had 6 people, and unfortunately 2 of the people who were there had a very issue doing the topic, and it took the whole hour. The second time I had a town hall, I had it at Cava, and it was Josh Chase, who's part of the Sioux Metro Growth Alliance, and my wife and I. There were 3 of us, so noon was kind of a tough time, and I get that. But in that town hall, what I was able to do was I kicked on Facebook Live, I recorded the video, and that video has now had, I think, 1,000 or so views, because what it was is I was talking through some of the updates that all of our city leadership, our city department heads, our city staff are in the midst of, and people wanted to know, they want to hear it from the horse's mouth, what's going on, what are the things that I should be able to expect. And so regular town halls is something that we probably need to be able to do. Somewhere we need to create a way to demonstrate to folks in town that we're performing against the objective that they've given us, right? What are the things that we know we need to do on their behalf? You've asked of us, now we've done, right? I made a comment earlier in the second hour, I said, Ben gets bright ideas from 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 at night sometimes. His list of potential improvements is really long. We know that sometimes there are people that are a little bit louder. I said, squeaky wheel gets grease. I've got one member of our community lately that's been in my ear on everything. And you know what? I thank him every time I talk to him. He's a pain in my ass, but you know what? If I didn't have that kind of critical feedback where I knew that I could get it. So we come up with these things that we know you asked, we did. I don't necessarily just want to be able to say that we're doing it for a single individual. We're doing it for larger groups of our community that have expressed that these are the kinds of things that we need to be able to lean into. We know that we need to be able to wrap that into our budgetary process, and that we need to be able to make sure that from a strategic perspective, we're tracking it and it's being accomplished. So, and then department head evaluations tied to goals. So last year we implemented a little bit more structure. We just were adding some structure to the process such that when we have strategic goals and they correlate to things that a department head will end up having to do and their staff will be tasked with executing, we want to make sure that we have a way to connect the dots between our strategic plan, their objectives, and then the stuff that everybody's doing on a daily basis, right? And so we're already well on the way of doing this. I think there's ways that we can structure it and make it better. And of course, I rely on the city department heads to keep me well informed because they do a great job. Economic prosperity. So the 5th of the 5 pillars, very, very important. And when we think about this again is part of that base of the pyramid, because if we don't do some of these things, a lot of the rest of it doesn't matter. So sustainable economic growth. And again, we're not growing to 3,000 people overnight. We've had some really crazy opportunities that have been presented to us where they would have changed the dynamic of our community overnight. There was a meat packing plant that wanted to come build on the north side of town. They were going to have 2,500 employees. Wow. Like, no, how about no? Jerry said no in about 0.3 of a second. And I think there was some experience in 2011 where there was a meatpacking plant that tried to build south of town, and they faced a very similar backlash of public opinion. When the Prison Reset Task Force was looking for a place to land, there were some very decided discussions where we said, what about Beresford? And we talked and we said that nope, that was not something that our community was interested in hosting. Whether it was helping us financially, we could sell them electric, we could sell them water, might have been great. But at the same time, we know that with something like that, there comes a certain identity. And so big opportunities like that. There are probably right-sized opportunities like manufacturing, agricultural technology, because we're a community, but we are surrounded by a school district that has, it's an agricultural community, right? Farmers that raise sheep, that have crop ground. We know that things are very important to them, and we know that we need to be able to tailor what goes on in our community to be able to support them, and the better connected we are with our ag partners in the community, the easier it's going to be when we have a next school bond vote to say, we're connected, we're on the same sheet of music, we're doing the right things, you know, we're complementing each other versus this kind of, sometimes it's a little adversarial. And so I think there's ways that we can improve that. We know that we're at the corner of 46 and 29. Lots of people, so great story, Will used to drive down to Sioux City as an electrician, he would drive back at night, you would see 4 cars. And now, you know, how far does it take you to see 4 cars on I-29? You know, 300 feet, lots of traffic on I-29. We need to be able to take advantage of that somehow. We need to find the right ways to be able to draw people off the interstate and Highway 46 when it's eventually complete to the east, and you're not taking your life into your own hands when you go to Hayward or Hudson. Our Chamber of Commerce has done a phenomenal job of pop-up shops, markets, promoting different small business opportunities within the community. We need to find additional ways to make sure that stuff like that can continue to persist. Now, this next line item, it says 10 new downtown businesses. Doesn't necessarily have to be downtown. We know that that's not easy because saying that you're gonna bring somebody in and plant them downtown isn't something that you can absolutely do. It's not something that we can, you know, control or drive. It's something that we can support. We can slap them on the back and say, good job, but a lot of times that's private business. So we've got to find ways to make sure and promote that. But when we say 10 new businesses, perhaps in the industrial park, perhaps somewhere else in town, perhaps a new charging station by the library, fast charging station. I have to look at the cost of that, and things like that. Tourism. We see this one, and from our perspective, we see this and we say, well, you know, tourists in Beresford, South Dakota. So a great story. Nathan Jensen, who's the president of the school board, was just here the last hour. He and his wife have part of their property. It's an old barn. They decided to renovate and make it into a VRBO. And they sort of, when they went into the process, they weren't 100% sure if it was something that was going to succeed or not. The first weekend that they had it open and available for rent, they had a couple out of Maryland that flew from Baltimore to Sioux Falls, got in the car, drove down here. They spent the back evening or the first evening on the back porch. They said, we've never seen this many stars. And so things like that, you know, Alex Munson's mom owns a home that's kind of off the interstate down by their property that she rents out. Those sorts of things, you know, small, albeit very small, things that we could potentially do in our community to promote ways to bring people in. Again, tug at that thread, which is Paris, South Dakota. That's something that would, Paris on the prairie. Those are the kinds of things that would potentially bring people in. All right, so one last slide. Everything that you've seen up to this point in time is a call for action. So this is a mandate for each one of us in this room. We just come to this strategy from a different perspective. Each one of us wants to wake up in the morning, know what we're going to do, and know how it contributes to making our community better. I think each one of us can find at least one line within that larger strategic plan to say, that's something that I'm doing to make our community better. We saw a lot of people come together, busting their butts and helping each other in the community after the storm. Those kinds of things on a longer scale where we're not working 18-hour days. That first day you work probably what, 18, 20? Yeah, pretty long. So each one of us has an opportunity. So what we owe you is a way to track how we achieve some of this, and a way we make Beresford a community that people want to come. They not only want to come here to visit, they want to come here to live. They want to call this their home. All right, and with that, it's only about 4:30. We're 27 minutes before you can have a beer. And I gotta have a beer before golf anyway, if any of you have seen my sling, part of being a boomer, I guess. Questions, parts of the plan that you think are, that make sense, parts of the plan that don't make sense? When I say priorities, childcare, and you know, if you don't have kids, it's like, it really doesn't matter to me, right? But there are so many of us in this community that do, even if your kids are grown, like Chris and, is he your youngest?
I know.
Yeah, so.
Number one priority.
Yes, you've got to be able to do something with that. And I did mention this earlier when we talked about childcare, but one of the things that we're doing is the Beresford Area Foundation graciously gave the city of Beresford $10,000. We're using that to bring in a consultant to help us come up with realistic options to enhance the capacity of childcare in Beresford. And what it's looking like now is that based on some of the dollars available through grants, some private donors, et cetera, we're actually going to make an effort to try to build a second center beyond Bright Beginnings. Or number one, we've got to resource what we've already got, but number two, we may potentially add an additional option that we know would make the school district comfortable because they would know about the system, it would be structured, and kids could be able to walk into their pre-K with having met some of the elements of what we know they need to in order to be able to be successful in the school system. And so that's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a little while, but we have some great people that are coming together to be able to make that happen. So childcare's got to be number one, and it has been. The gentleman that was here earlier from Sioux Metro Growth Alliance, he was at a city council meeting a year and a half ago, and I told him we were working on a childcare task force and want to be able to make some things happen. He's like, "Yep, if you figure it out, just let me know," because every community in South Dakota is trying to do the exact same thing. Right? It's tough to find real, legitimate success stories because it's tough. So everybody wants it affordable at the same time. We'll make a decent amount of money, and it's not easy. So.
Is Bright Beginnings full?
They're not, because they are missing a couple staff members. If they added, I think, one or two more in building two, they could add another 12.
So I know that's, I mean, I've talked to Dr. Dagan about that, and he's like, yeah, we have plenty of room, but we just can't get the staff.
Correct.
So like a second center, would we have the same issue with a staffing issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we would do is we're gonna make Bright Beginnings as right as possible before we would move, because that long-term vision, that's a 3 to 5 year plan.
I'm out of the game, I don't.
Yeah. You don't want any more kids?
I'm done with daycare, so, I was just wondering if they knew that they weren't. Let's calm down over there.
Marie is married now, isn't he?
He is married, yes.
I know Marie's big family, so.
Yeah, well, they're a long ways away from each other, so.
Question, council, you now heard this, you guys are living in my, heard this.
I would just like one thing really quick too, and this goes with the idea of together and something that we at school want to continue partnering with businesses and organizations. And so this year, there'll be information as they come out. If you have questions, just let me know. But our parent teacher conferences are at the 6-12 level, pretty non-existent. Just we have pretty low numbers of parents who get involved with that at that age. So we're gonna try something different this year and do a community school connections night on that Monday night at conferences. And so you might be hearing from me, or as I reach out, we'd like community groups, businesses, student organizations to set up booths and tables in our gym, have kind of an open house feel, have some food. Invite not just parents, but community to see what we're doing in the school and in the community at large. And just kind of celebrate that. So if that's something that, your entity might want to be part of, reach out to me, but I'll be sending stuff out through our communication channels on that too, as we get closer, but.
One thing Dr. Merriman and I have talked about too, so that you guys, everybody knows, Dr. Merriman was just appointed the high school principal, born and raised in South Dakota, spent a little time in Canton, but now back, and I brought him into city council when he was initially appointed. I think it's a great thing, it's a great news story, right? Because there's been a little bit of turnover at the high school, and I think it's a great thing. He and I shared a message, and I think I emailed Pratt too.
Yeah,
Or was it
maybe,
yeah.
maybe, yeah.
I want to ask a couple high schoolers to form a committee that comes to the city council. And promotes governance at the municipal level, local level, and even better understanding at the state level. Come so that the guy like Caleb Watson, who was very active for years in politics before he came on Dusty Johnson's staff. Guy like that, you know, if we give them an opportunity, they can give us feedback, and a lot of times kids at that age have some great ideas that I never would have thought of. Good and bad, right, wrong, or different, and so that's one thing we're gonna try to do this, as we get involved in, so. Mike, you've been on council for a while, see things come and go, what are your thoughts?
So I think this is a great first step. Yeah, the time I've been on the council, we haven't done anything like this before. Bringing it, you know, as a community, in a big group like this, you're maybe not coming up with anything right now, but as you go back to your jobs or you're with your families, you're gonna, oh, yeah, I remember what Mayor Seeley talked about. I think I have an idea for that. So I think you're doing the right thing by hosting this and bringing all these people in.
Thank you. And as you talk about feedback, so several of you have been invested in the process whereby we are searching for Jerry's replacement. We're down to 2 candidates. Several of you had an opportunity to visit with Jason and Jared. Actually, candidates at this one time. I heard through the grapevine, you said some great things, which is, I don't know the space that you're in. I don't know the Parks Department. I don't know, I'm not an arborist. And, I'm gonna resource you and get out of your way. But the nice thing is, as we take the 30 years of service that Jerry's provided to us, we do have an opportunity to kind of reimagine the way we establish communication through to the city administrator, how it gets to the council, and then how we act on that, right? So I think, you know, obviously we know whoever is selected next week is going to go through a fire hose, not literally, thankfully, but they're going to be on the deep end of a lot of information and they're going to be overwhelmed. But again, it's we know that this person is, they're being brought in to hopefully serve for several years, probably not 30, but several, so. Elaine, finance officer of the year, any thoughts? Yeah. Caitlin, Pat, Will, Sarah? Yeah. Anything struck you, anything I said was stupid?
It's exciting, we need a facility.
Yeah.
Get different people together that come up with ideas and.
The nice thing is, we're gonna be able to take some of this. And maybe a small number of objectives to begin with. We're gonna set some objectives aside, we're gonna tell the people in our community, we're gonna do this. We're gonna put resources behind it through the budget process, through the way that we work. We're gonna be able to knock some of these things out. I don't think it's gonna be everything, right? We're not gonna cure cancer and solve world hunger by noon. So this will take a while, but this is the start, right? And being accountable to bringing things back to the council to say this is what worked and this is what didn't work. One of the things that I found when I was in the military is we would regularly go into big forums where we're briefing our bosses and we're all talking about the good and great things we're doing. And we weren't lying per se, but we were sugarcoating the hell out of everything, right? I would appreciate if we have a very honest way to bring feedback to the city council, to the city leadership, so that we know what's working, what's not working. If something's not working, maybe that's not the right element that we bring into our strategic plan. Maybe that's not the right thing for now. Maybe it's something down the road. Maybe we find out that there's other priorities too. Right?
How do you balance the vision that we foresee in Beresford and keeping it affordable to live here? That's, I mean, you look at your utility bill, and there's a surcharge here, there's a surcharge there. Does the city have the money moving forward without nickel and diming the residents every time we have to do something?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's in the survey comments, there were several comments about the Highway 46 surcharge. That one, the Sager, is that separate line?
It's hard.
Water treatment facility. And so people are sensitive to that, right? Each time, when we meet, we would ideally, as we consider electric studies, as we consider the availability of water in the future, wastewater capacity, which we now have a ton of, right? We're actually above and beyond. With the implementation of the new Sager system, we have more capacity than we have need right now. We moved beyond the ponds to the new Sager system. And I always forget what Sager stands for, submersible agri something. I don't know.
The way to say wastewater. And also
The good system. So, each one of those things, when we look at the Sager system, correct me where my numbers are wrong, it's $17 million. Much of the resources of that came from outside of Beresford. And so we didn't have to pass each dollar, the cost of each dollar on. As we looked at the new development up north. And so Mike, I'll have to remember, this is your question and kind of what you're getting at. When we did the infrastructure for that, we took advantage of the Department of Ag and Natural Resources grant that provided for the infrastructure so that it wouldn't be passed on to the people that are going to buy those homes in the future and the people that are living in our community currently. And so, I don't know that anything's ever going to go down. I think where and when we have the ability to control cost, we're going to make every effort that we can. We're not going to get wild about spending. And this, through the budgetary process where we look at what's coming in and what's going out, we're going to be diligent about ensuring that we are effectively spending the money that has been set aside that's coming to us from the citizens of Beresford. I think being able to explain why cost would increase, I think that's something we have to do. As far as, will you ever be able to buy a new house for under $350,000? I don't think so. Honestly, with the cost of material, the cost of labor, I don't know that, I think that reality is coming on. Maybe I'll be surprised, but Congressman Johnson did have a very interesting statistic yesterday. He talked about the rest of the United States of America, 49 states, their average economic growth was 3%. Our economic growth was negative 3% in South Dakota. So that's something that he's using as he's running for governor now. He, Doden, and John Hanson. And they're going to be in our community a lot between now and when we have that primary. And so I would encourage each one of you to go visit with them because our governor and their ability to support small municipalities like municipalities like ours, critically important, because if they don't have a good feel for the best way to support our community, they're not my candidate, right? So, where's Carla? How you doing? Good. Got about 13 minutes, comments. So goal going forward is obviously put this into a nice condensed document, get it out to you guys. We want you guys to be able to get a good feel for, and again, you guys know that I'm open. Send me a text, send me a Facebook message, send me I don't know how many of you use an X anymore, but actually, I don't know if I see those direct messages anymore. TikTok. I have a couple stupid TikToks out there. One that got 100,000 views with my son running into the garage door. Pretty awesome. So social media is not the enemy. Has to be used responsibly. But yeah, I welcome your feedback. And I think because every bit of feedback that I get is something that I'm going to share with the city council. It's something that I'm going to share with you guys. Because we have a commitment to being transparent. So somebody comes and tells me that something doesn't work right, then so it's about, any other questions? Let's take a 2 or 3 minute break and let's reconvene in here in about 7 minutes. And then we'll finish with some awards. And then if you want to, the bar will be open for a single beverage. One, I didn't. I just joking because I was walking past these guys earlier. Some of us have to get ready for golf, right? So. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, hello. How are you? So, feel free to. Almost better. Yeah. All of a sudden, people have gotten more remote. Very all those. Yeah, I don't know. Very pretty well, that's it. He actually joined up. That's what it's gonna be. It's out. Line of recognition of your sort of a. Yes. All right. I'm gonna give it 2 more minutes and let everybody come back in. We're gonna finish the afternoon up with some reports, and then I will open up the floor. Yeah, just. What's that? Sure. The latest reminding me that from a procedural perspective is this is a public meeting involving city council. We're going to adjourn. And then we will, we'll, go from there. So, all right, looks like we've got everybody back. So, Denise Gertzman, if you'll join me up here. I know you love public attention. So I asked for, so I sent out some information with respect to the strategic plan. And I said that this would be a great opportunity to recognize the people in our community that are doing good and great things. And so I said, let's recognize a volunteer of the year, a junior staff member of the year, a team member that's, just been here for a few years, kind of on their way up, and let's recognize a senior employee. So, the 2025 Beresford City Volunteer of the Year. Thank you. Yeah. For those of you that don't know, okay, so I spent a lot of time with Denise in the back of an ambulance at 3 o'clock in the morning dealing with drunks. Not any one individual person, just staying with the general patient category. She is the bedrock of this foundation of our community because she does 80% of the work for our ambulance service. And if it wasn't for Denise and what she does for our community through the lens of the ambulance service, we wouldn't be able to, some of those safety and satisfaction scores that we saw in the survey, they wouldn't be as high as they are. She does a tremendous amount of work. She's a tremendous advocate for the city of Beresford. She raised her boys here. They're both, one's in North Dakota, one's in Rapid City now. They come back periodically or they call grandma niece on the phone. She's the kind of person that we want representing our community because she's the very best of what we're doing. I think volunteers are really what make our community special. We decided to, I'll give Council Tiedemann some credit. When we built the new ballpark, we looked for the right, name for that ballpark. We know that, it was obviously, the ballpark from before, there was a tremendous amount of money that was given there. But as we looked at that new park, we knew that we needed to call it something that would reflect the sense of our community that we know we have. We call it Volunteers Park. It's just primarily designated for volunteer baseball coaches, for volunteer umps, and for volunteer folks that go to the concession stand. But at the same time, we acknowledge that that part is there to represent all volunteers in our community, because without volunteers, we wouldn't be in the list round. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Alex Thompson, if you join me up here. Yeah, he's like, oh shit, what I do? So, I asked the city department heads for some, nominations, and of course, we had a storm. So, the storm was, it was tough because they put everybody to work on 18-hour days. It stretched our resources, it did a lot of things, and so I think, I think a lot of department heads were intent on submitting out nominations. I think those that did, congratulations, Mr. Alex Thompson, City Employee of the Year, 2025. Your boss did a tremendous job of recognizing the hard work that you do on an everyday basis. He feels like you lean forward. He feels like you go above and beyond on a regular basis, and he feels like you're a critical member of the team. So for that, I thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
Our family is the No, there you go. The family's moving to Beresford, so that is a great news story. Okay, so now, the only thing that stands between you and your first beer, or lemonade, I'll buy you a lemonade if you don't drink it. It's 5 o'clock. Mr. Jerry Simons, can you join me up front? So, we were getting down to the wire, and I lean on my mayoral advisory committee, which is a 3-member committee that I staff a lot of decisions with, because shared decision-making is a good thing, because I'm not the brightest kid in the room, and so I need some help, especially on decisions like this. At the end, we ended up with a few nominations for our Senior Employee of the Year. It just so happens that it's our city administrator, who on the 10th of October, he will, last day is 10th.
Correct.
Yes, 11 October, this guy will officially be retired. So several of you know that we're in the midst of hiring somebody, and we've got a couple of great candidates, but it's really, really hard to be in the process of hiring somebody. And imagine being on the working end of this process as an applicant, knowing that the shoes you got to fill are as big as Jerry's are. And I'm gonna be 100% honest, there's a lot of people in our community that want to try to tell me, like, Jerry, yes, Jerry does that. You know what? I've told every last one of them that everything that I've seen from the minute that I've been a member of the city has been tremendous. He's the kind of person that does a tremendous amount of work on an everyday basis, in addition to managing a very busy establishment, keeping himself sane over, that's your side job? Yeah. And so, he's done a tremendous amount for 30 years, and there'll be other accolades we're going to give you, but I received a nomination, and when we reviewed the nomination, it was clear that you are easily the Beresford City Employee of the Year 2025 Senior Employee, so.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
I knew we weren't catering tonight, so.
Yeah. I was like, did we get food? I gotta. All right, so, congratulations. Thank you very much for showing up. Jerry, congratulations. We still have some work to do with respect to hiring the city administrator. Next week's gonna be pretty busy. We've got a city bus tour coming on Tuesday. There's something else happening on, I don't know. I got a bunch of stuff out there. This was a thought exercise. A lot of you are gonna go out of here. Rob already said that he's gonna have 2 beers and then come back and talk to me. I fully expect that there will be people that will walk away from this and have some thoughts. Jessica came here as a member of the municipal league. Very unique perspective versus a lot of the city staff. Hopefully afterwards, she sent me a couple of thoughts about, this was great, this was dumb. And so, again, I want all kinds of feedback, because that feedback will be wrapped into this. And again, this is for you guys, and it's for us, and it's for our community. So thank you. I appreciate it very much. And with that, I will make sure that I will call for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn, second.
Motion is second to adjourn the meeting. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, adjourned.
Basically,
Yes, ma'am.
a photo.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. Right.
It's got to be nice.
You guys can live through all the other. Yeah.
Like our own.
Oh, okay. You're ready. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.